Chapter 1808. Bai Xiaowen stared into the eyes of Rosher's magic fire crow, as if trying to see through Rosher's heart from those green pupils. You should know very well what I want. At this juncture, it's better for us to be frank, Rosher's crow replied, Caw. You want that demon god's skeleton in my hands? What can you give me? Since it's a deal, I'll also put in my chips. Bai Xiaowen said calmly, my deal is the entire Dark Age continent. What? Rosher's crow didn't even make a caw. Bai Xiaowen said calmly, there were originally 3 demigods in the Dark Age continent. Now that Isman and Nibras have died in my hands, you're the only demigod left. In this situation, I'm sure you won't have any objections if I say that I've already taken control of this continent. Rosher's crow was silent, but it didn't refute either. Bai Xiaowen continued, this continent is very beneficial to me, but the demon god's skeleton in your and Nibras' hands is more significant to me. As long as you give me the demonic god skeleton in your hands and assist me in finding the part of the demonic god skeleton that Nibras has, I will give you Isman and Nibras' magic cores and promise not to interfere with the affairs of the Dark Age continent in the future. Nibras was already dead. When Sigdelifa searched his body, they found a spatial storage device engraved with demonic runes on his body. They guessed that the 2 leg bones Nibras had were in this storage device. However, just like Isman, after Nibras' death, his spatial storage device could no longer be activated. He could only use prophecy or other auxiliary means to find the corresponding storage space of the spatial storage device in the Dark Age plane. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen had to find Demon God Chi's skeleton before he was willing to give up on the Dark Age plane. Bai Xiaowen had given Isman and Nibras magic cores to Rosher, so that Rosher could be at ease and be the local tyrant of this plane. Rosher's crow was silent for a while before speaking, Caw. The conditions you proposed are indeed tempting. However, there seems to be another external force in the Dark Age dimension apart from you. They killed my second avatar and are still a great threat to me. If I don't get rid of them, I won't be able to rule this world in your place. Bai Xiaowen smiled faintly. I hate this foreign force as well. We already have a conflict, so they should be a hindrance to my goal. So, in the following process, I might kill these guys. Is it possible? Rosher's crow was a little dissatisfied. If you trust me and are willing to assist me, then the word possibly will become definitely, Rosher's crow cawed twice. No, I don't trust anyone now. However, we can still make a deal. Give me the 2 magic cores first, and I'll give you the demon god's skeleton. Alright, it's a deal. Bai Xiaowen said calmly. What's the deal? Rosher's crow said, you just said that Isman's magic cores are in the new City of Silver. When you return to the new City of Silver and get Isman's magic cores, I'll naturally appear. You'll appear? Bai Xiaowen was curious. Caw, it's this crow that will appear, Rosher cawed angrily. It'll bring the demon god's skeleton in exchange for the magic cores. I hope you keep your word, Christos. Bai Xiaowen and Sigdelifa continued to command the undead army, crossing the blockade and heading towards the new City of Silver. When they passed by the Human United Kingdom, which was the new human kingdom established by Helbart, Kelawan, and the others, Bai Xiaowen ordered the army to set up camp. He brought Sigdelifa and hurried to the capital of the United Kingdom. The capital of the United Kingdom was the greatly expanded Wutu town. Without the threat of the demons, Wutu town was much more prosperous than before. The flow of people had increased greatly, and it was beginning to have a new atmosphere of humanity. Bai Xiaowen met Helbart. Dispense with the formalities. Bai Xiaowen glanced at Helbart. Where's Kelawan? Why don't I see her? Helbart said curiously, didn't you send someone here 2 days ago? The witch was personally taken away by your envoy. I sent someone here 2 days ago? Bai Xiaowen frowned. What did the envoy look like? Helbart said, he was covered in a black robe, and I couldn't see his face clearly. However, he was riding a frost dragon and claimed to be the envoy of Christos. He had something to do with summoning the witch Kelawan. You didn't even see his face, and you believe that he's my envoy? Bai Xiaowen's face darkened. Kelluan left with him just like that? Without any resistance? Helbart whispered, the witch probably took this envoy seriously. Of course, she wouldn't go against your will. Although Bai Xiaowen was angry, he knew that he couldn't blame Helbart for this. Very few outsiders entered the dark epic plane. It wasn't strange that Helbart thought that the unidentified outsider was Bai Xiaowen's subordinate. What really puzzled Bai Xiaowen was Kelluan. She was sharp, intelligent, and had the ability to predict the future. How could she not see that there was something fishy about the newcomer? Bai Xiaowen originally wanted to use Kelluan's prophecy ability to divine the location of the demon god skeleton that Nibraz had. Now, it was impossible. Thinking further, what was the Purple Shadow Gang's goal in tricking Kelluan? It was probably the same as Bai Xiaowen, for the demon god skeleton. For the Purple Shadow Gang, the demon god core was just a bargaining chip. The demon god skeleton was their ultimate goal. As early as the battle on the island, when Purple Shadow appeared, Bai Xiaowen thought that the other party's goal wasn't as simple as snatching the demon god core. It was very likely that they were aiming for the demon god skeleton. Now, this guess was at least 90% likely to be true. What a strong opponent. Interesting. Bai Xiaowen took a breath. A desire to fight was burning in his chest, and his smile gradually became perverted. Perhaps this really was related to the message conveyed by his father, by Yuantang's second spiritual thought. 100 years had passed since the era of psionic ability. It had been 4 years since Bai Xiaowen's two souls fused and embarked on the path of awakening. 100 years after the era of psionic ability, the land of origin opened. There was indeed a group of hidden experts in the Interstellar Alliance. They were unwilling to be left out and had begun to make plans in advance. Perhaps, it wasn't just the hidden experts of the Interstellar Alliance. Behind the Great Yan region and the Purple Shadow Gang, there were mysterious forces that couldn't be seen clearly. The undercurrents were turbulent. Let's go. Bai Xiaowen tiptoed. The frost dragon beneath his feet flapped its wings. The strong wind pressure blew the dust all over the ground. Lord Christos, please wait a moment. Do you mean that the emissary 2 days ago was a fake? Helbart braved the strong wind caused by the frost dragon's wings and stepped forward. What should we do? Has Mr. Witch been killed by them? Bai Xiaowen calmly said, You're wrong, Helbart. If the other party wants Kelluan's life, they don't have to make things so complicated. Kelluan is also useful to them. Most importantly, in Kelluan's heart, these people may also be useful. After leaving these meaningful words, Bai Xiaowen rode the frost dragon and soared into the sky, flying out of the capital of the United Human Kingdom. Behind him, Sigs Delafa followed closely. Outside the city, the undead army moved out in an orderly manner, heading in the direction of the new city of Silver. Standing on the city walls, Helbart felt a deep sense of anxiety as he watched the scene. The new city of Silver. Xiafeng had his hands behind his back as he floated above the new city of Silver. Around him were demons that had fallen to the ground in a mess. The Purple Shadow Gang was here? Bai Xiaowen exclaimed. Xiafeng nodded slightly. A guy wearing a black robe and riding a frost dragon came. I don't know how he broke through the outer immortal array you set up outside the city. Fortunately, you set up an inner immortal array to protect the God-Fiend core. Otherwise, he would have succeeded. Black robe, frost dragon? Bai Xiaowen's eyes lit up. Did you catch this person? Xiafeng shook his head. He escaped. Xiafeng then pointed at the demon corpses on the ground. These demon servants of yours are quite loyal. They used their lives to buy time so that I could rush over. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, These demon servants have a place called the Demon God Domain that can contain their souls. To them, death is just the beginning of another life. However, they have to sleep in the Demon God Domain for a period of time. To these demon servants, death was nothing to be afraid of. After a certain period of time, they would be reborn as a good demon again. They only feared Bai Xiaowen. Xiafeng nodded slightly. What's the situation now? What do you want me to do? Bai Xiaowen first opened the inner immortal array, took out Isman's god-fiend core, and put it in the leather bag at his waist. He then said, "Brother Xia, are there any talents in prophecy in the Great Xia territory?" Xia Feng shook his head. Prophecy evolvers have always been very rare. Of course, prophecy evolvers are at least at the hero level. Compared to the huge number of evolvers, there aren't many hero-level evolvers. Bai Xiaowen frowned and thought for 0.1 seconds. He said to the Deliphus Sig beside him, "Return to the territory." "Master, what are your orders?" The Deliphus Sig knelt on one knee. "Go to the dungeon in the White Phoenix territory and bring the captive named Fu Jing here." "Yes, Master." The Deliphus Sig stepped into the new City of Silver's resonant teleportation array. Bai Xiaowen said to Xia Feng, "Actually, it's better for me to go there myself. However, I have to wait for a deal, so it's not appropriate for me to leave without permission." "What deal? With whom?" Xia Feng still didn't know. Bai Xiaowen's spiritual sense had a wide range and had already discovered clues 5 kilometers away. He pointed to the sky in the north and said, They're already here." The magic fire crow controlled by Rosher flew to the sky above the new City of Silver and finally entered the palace. Bai Xiaowen stood in the main hall. "Rosher, you came quickly. It seems that my whereabouts can't be hidden from you." Rosher's crow said, "Caw. You're leading an army of more than 10,000. It's very easy to know your whereabouts." "Oh, it can't be that simple." Bai Xiaowen wasn't so easily fooled. He smiled faintly. "My spiritual sense can completely cover the entire army, including the surrounding area of more than 5 kilometers in my heart. But I didn't notice you spying on me. You should have other methods to determine my whereabouts." Rosher's crow. "Caw, alright. It's because of Nibra's magic core. We 3 descendants of the gods have a certain sense of direction towards each other's magic core aura. After all, the 3 of us worked together sincerely back then to pollute this world." This explanation was no different from Bai Xiaowen's conjecture. Bai Xiaowen didn't pursue the matter further and just kept it as a piece of information in his heart. "Then let's get to the point. Where's your real body? Do you really want to trade through this crow?" Bai Xiaowen asked. "Rosher, Caw, I've already engraved a magic fire teleportation rune in this crow's body." After the crow finished speaking, its sharp beak suddenly widened. A green magic fire rune light emerged from the crow's mouth. Then, it slowly spat out a hand bone, which floated in front of Bai Xiaowen. "Caw. Christos, I've already shown my sincerity. You won't turn hostile and rob me now, right?" Bai Xiaowen smiled. He took out the small leather pouch from his waist and poured out the 2 magic cores inside. "Caw, hurry up and trade," Rosher's crow said impatiently. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "Wait a moment. I have one more thing to ask of you." "You." "Christos, we've already discussed this before. You can't raise the price." "Bai Xiaowen, your human language is really good. But don't worry, I'll keep my promise. But the thing I'm asking of you is also very beneficial to you. I suggest that you consider it carefully." In order to increase his persuasion, Bai Xiaowen directly flicked the 2 magic cores into the crow's mouth. The crow swallowed the 2 magic cores, and 2 obvious bulges appeared in its stomach. But in the next second, the bulges disappeared without a trace. Clearly, the magic fire teleportation rune in the crow's body had teleported them to Rosher's hands. Demons were a race that was good at interdimensional teleportation. Back then, the Silver King Isman had used the magic fire teleportation portal technology to teleport his troops back to the City of Silver from thousands of miles away with the intention of catching Bai Xiaowen off guard. But Bai Xiaowen was one step ahead. He had set up an immortal array in advance and made sufficient preparations to complete a shocking counterattack. Therefore, although Rosher's ability to engrave magic fire teleportation runes in the crow's body was brilliant, it was not beyond Bai Xiaowen's expectations. After obtaining the 2 magic cores, Rosher finally calmed down from his panic. "Caw. Say it, Christos. What do you want me to do for you? Chapter 1809. Sig Delafa went to the White Phoenix domain to pick up Fu Jing through the resonance teleportation formation. This trip would waste a lot of time in the teleportation formation. Bai Xiaowen put away the Death God's hand bone. In the quiet room, he wrapped the Death God's face mask around the Death God's hand bone and chose to devour and absorb it. Watching the Death God's hand bone slowly shrink and disappear, Bai Xiaowen was deep in thought. It was not the first time Bai Xiaowen had come into contact with the Death God's hand bone. Back in the Awakened Plane, Aaron World, he had obtained a section of the Death God's hand bone. At that time, Bai Xiaowen did not have the ability to discover the wonderful uses of the Death God's hand bone, so he made a deal with the spirit realm in exchange for something that could be used at that time, the residue of a divine power crystal. Looking at it now, Bai Xiaowen had lost out in that deal. However, if Bai Xiaowen had not let go of the hand bone, Li Shi would not have been able to obtain the hero profession Ghost Warrior. In the future, Li Shi's performance in the spirit realm's exploration, unification, and various leagues would be greatly affected. Bai Xiaowen did not regret that deal. What he really paid attention to was that this Death God's hand bone seemed to be somewhat different from the one he had obtained back then. The one he had obtained back then was the right hand, but this one was the left hand. This was a conclusion drawn from the angle of the phalanx. 2 years ago. 3 years ago. 100 years of spiritual source. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and watched as the Death God's hand bone was completely devoured and absorbed. He adjusted his thoughts, sat cross-legged, and entered a meditative state. He put on the Death God's face mask. A large amount of information once again flooded into Bai Xiaowen's mind. However, Bai Xiaowen was now able to receive this information flow with relative ease. Without any additional action from Bai Xiaowen, this information flow rushed into the third incomplete Black Book after the Art of War and the Taishu Sutra. The incomplete Black Book also became more complete. Bai Xiaowen was most concerned about whether the Death God's power had improved. He injected a trace of true inner force into it. Bai Xiaowen's Grim Reaper's power was currently at 100 out of 100. In this case, if he injected his true qi into the Black Book, it would not transform into a new Death God's power, because the Death God's power had already reached its upper limit, and his true qi would only be repelled. But this time, after his true qi entered the Black Book, it quickly transformed into a pure black Death God's power that swirled around the Black Book. Bai Xiaowen perked up. As expected, absorbing the Death God's left hand bone had increased the upper limit of the Death God's power. After that, Bai Xiaowen patiently injected his true inner force bit by bit, transforming it into the new Death God's power. 2 hours later, the power of the Grim Reaper reached a new upper limit. At this time, Bai Xiaowen had already used more than 2,000 units of true essence energy. Bai Xiaowen exited his meditation state and glanced at his personal interface. Power of the Grim Reaper, 300/300 from 100 points to 300 points. Bai Xiaowen closed his eyes and sensed it. The increase in the upper limit is only one aspect. My control of the Death God's power seems to have become more proficient. With a thought, Bai Xiaowen added another small sword seal that was as black as ink to the 3 quintessential essence sword seals that were revolving behind his head, slowly revolving. This black sword seal was formed from pure Death God's power. Maintaining the small pitch-black sword consumed too much of his mind, so Bai Xiaowen could only withdraw it. However, he was very excited. To be able to reach this step, Bai Xiaowen could use the Death God's power to launch some powerful killing techniques. However, the Death God's power was more feminine, and was not suitable for moves like Origin Lightning or Sky Origin Lightning. Its power would be reduced, and it would not be much stronger than lightning spells cast with true qi. Bai Xiaowen still had to find a few powerful dark attribute skills to be able to truly unleash the destructive power of the Death God's power. Looking at the Black Book just now, it seems that the cover has become more complete. Bai Xiaowen closed his eyes again, and his spiritual sense sank into his sea of consciousness. He had always been interested in the Black Book, and had tried to flip through it many times, but he was unable to do so. Now with the addition of the death god's left-hand bone, the black book had a new change, so Bai Xiaowen naturally wanted to try again. His spiritual sense was like a big hand, gently trying to open the cover. Whoosh, black light shot out, and Bai Xiaowen easily opened the cover, opening the first page of the black book. However, the following pages were still incomplete, and Bai Xiaowen was still unable to open it. Being able to open the first page of the black book was not a small improvement. The first page was blank, but this kind of profound ancient book needed to be read with spiritual sense, and Bai Xiaowen could be considered to have some experience. He carefully injected a trace of spiritual sense into the black book. With a bang, Bai Xiaowen felt that his surroundings had changed greatly, as if he was in a pitch-black space. There was no up, down, left, or right, and there was no light. This feeling was 100 times more terrifying than being confined. Fortunately, in the next second, there was a light green light rising, as if it had a life of its own, moving and flowing. The green light left a trail and finally formed a polyhedron. This polyhedron looked like the base of two pyramids, one top and one bottom, but it was composed of 12 lines, very simple and very beautiful. Bai Xiaowen tried to explore it with his spiritual sense. He was more and more surprised, because when he approached it with his spiritual sense, he found that the polyhedron looked simple, but in fact it was another world, and each line was made up of many tiny symbols. Bai Xiaowen's heart moved, and he manipulated his spiritual sense, following the starting symbol of one of the lines of the polyhedron, and began to trace it. As soon as he began to trace, Bai Xiaowen suddenly felt the death power in his sea of consciousness become restless, and every time he traced a symbol, a trace of the death power seemed to be consumed, and every time he traced a symbol, the symbol would slowly extinguish, turning from its original green to black, exactly the same as the background of this pitch-black space. Bai Xiaowen felt that his spiritual sense seemed to have become a large blackboard eraser, erasing the polyhedron drawn by the green chalk on the blackboard, and returning the blackboard to darkness. Of course, compared to the ease of erasing the blackboard, the process of tracing the symbols was very difficult. The death power was not very obedient to begin with, and belonged to a higher level of energy than Bai Xiaowen's current level. Moreover, these symbols looked simple individually, but when they were connected together, they were complicated, and it was easy to get the order wrong, and have to be redone. After tracing for a long time, Bai Xiaowen still could not completely trace a line of green light. The death power was almost exhausted, and Bai Xiaowen was thinking about the outside world, so he did not stay for long, and directly withdrew from the pitch-black space of the black book. With one last glance, the first page of the black book became blank again, and it was impossible to see the boundless pitch-black space and the mysterious green rune polyhedron hidden inside. Chapter 1810. Bai Xiaowen heaved a sigh of relief and thought to himself, it's really not easy to draw this green polyhedron. It looks like I have to summarize the shapes and patterns of the symbols that make up the green polyhedron to minimize mistakes. During the drawing process, Bai Xiaowen's error rate exceeded 10%. Clearly, he failed. According to Bai Xiaowen's considerations, he had to keep the error rate below 2%. With his current 300 points of death's power, he had a chance of drawing the first line. If he wanted to draw the entire green polyhedron, he had to lower the error rate further, or increase the upper limit of his power of death. This matter couldn't be rushed. After closing the incomplete black book, Bai Xiaowen's heart suddenly stirred. He felt that the moment he closed the black book, the green symbols that he had just tried to draw came one after another, and he entered a state of epiphany. This feeling was a little like using the light sphere of epiphany. However, this feeling came and went quickly. Before Bai Xiaowen could decide how to use it, it had disappeared without a trace. Drawing the symbols of the green polyhedron in the black book can actually help me gain an epiphany? Bai Xiaowen's eyes lit up. He really didn't expect the green symbols to be used in this aspect. He had thought that after drawing the green polyhedron, he would gain insight into one or two godly darkness elemental skills. Being able to help him gain an epiphany was naturally much better than one or two darkness elemental skills. Bai Xiaowen immediately placed the matter of drawing the black book's green polyhedron as an extremely high priority. If he wanted to cultivate in the future, he could first draw the green polyhedron and gain a certain amount of epiphany time before studying the occupation manuals. Master, I've brought Fu Jing here. Sig's voice sounded in Bai Xiaowen's heart. Bai Xiaowen opened the door to the chamber and saw many of the new City of Silver's devil subordinates waiting outside. Xiafeng wasn't present. Bai Xiaowen glanced at Sig's. The latter understood quickly and said softly, Lord Xiafeng is cultivating in the quiet room. He said that he wants to familiarize himself with the use of the divine artifact. He also said that if Master needs anything, you can call him directly. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and said, there's no need for that for now. Brother Xia is an idiot. Let him cultivate in peace. After a pause, Bai Xiaowen said, bring Fu Jing here. Sig waved his hand, and 2 elite ghosts escorted Fu Jing to the front. Fu Jing's current appearance was very dejected. His white hair was messy, his clothes were stained with dirt, and even his beard was dirty. His aura was also quite weak. At the same time, he was tied up and unable to move. Last time on the dinosaur planet, Bai Xiaowen defeated the allied forces of Goldstone region and Tianfu region in one fell swoop. Fu Jing was grazed by Bai Xiaowen's primordial lightning and lost half his life. After that, he was taken captive by Bai Xiaowen. After his spiritual energy was sealed, he was sent to the prison of the White Phoenix region. Bai Xiaowen didn't kill Fu Jing all this time, nor did he give him any preferential treatment. The reason why he didn't kill him was because Fu Jing was a rare divine-type evolver. Perhaps he would be of great use in the future. This time, in the Dark Age dimension, which Kelawan's prophecy helped Bai Xiaowen find the death god's skull that Isman had hidden. This proved that divine-type evolvers weren't useless. Fu Jing had betrayed the Great Tang region at the last moment. Later on, when he went to Tianfu region, Mengchuan treated him with respect and even entrusted him with important tasks. Naturally, it was because he had value. As for why he didn't give Fu Jing preferential treatment, Bai Xiaowen had his own considerations. He wanted to treat Fu Jing coldly for a period of time. He wanted to kill Fu Jing's reserved aura so that Fu Jing would have to guess and be afraid in the midst of a life-or-death situation every day. Seeing that Fu Jing's aura was weak and his gaze was evasive, Bai Xiaowen knew that treating him coldly for a period of time had a certain effect. Bai Xiaowen could tell from Fu Jing's breathing and the details of his blood flow that Fu Jing wasn't actually that panicked in the depths of his heart. The evasive and fearful expression in front of him was most likely an act. In fact, it wasn't bad for Fu Jing to be obedient on the surface. It was better than Fu Jing's arrogant and rude attitude. Fu Jing, I've locked you up for so many days. Do you have anything you want to say to me? Bai Xiaowen's tone was calm. Fu Jing was also trying to figure out the situation. LV Wang didn't kill him after locking him up. This meant that he was still valuable to LV Wang. Today, he was suddenly taken out of prison and urgently brought to this spirit realm. It was obvious that LV Wang had a use for him. At least he could keep his life for the time being. Fu Jing looked at Bai Xiaowen's excessively young face and thought to himself. Most powerhouses who achieved success at such a young age had a strong desire for control. They wouldn't allow their subordinates to offend their authority. Now, he still had to pretend to be in fear and trepidation. Only by doing so could he keep his life. Hearing Bai Xiaowen's question, Fu Jing cried bitterly and knelt in front of Bai Xiaowen. Lord LV Wang, I've been blinded by lard. I actually had the delusion of going against you. A mantis trying to stop a chariot and an ant trying to shake a tree are not enough to describe my actions. Now, I only hope that Lord LV Wang can be magnanimous and let this useless old man live. I'll struggle at death's door until the end of my life. Bai Xiaowen raised his hand and Fu Jing immediately stopped crying. Fu Jing, you don't have to act in front of me. Bai Xiaowen rubbed his forehead with a slight headache. My time is precious. I don't have time to beat around the bush. I'll lay it out for you now. Now, do something for me. As long as it's done, you can leave or stay at will. Fu Jing heaved a sigh of relief. Since Bai Xiaowen had thrown out conditions, there was room for negotiation. He hurriedly asked, Lord L.V. Wang said that I can leave or stay at will. Could it be that you're referring to this old man being able to stay at White Phoenix territory? Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. It's a pity that a territory doesn't have a prophecy-type evolver. After doing this, if you want to stay at White Phoenix territory, I can give you a respectable position. But you have to be mentally prepared. This position won't be as glorious as Tang Dynasty's state preceptor. Of course, if you don't want to join White Phoenix territory, I'll let you go. Fu Jing's heart warmed. What he was most worried about now was that Bai Xiaowen would throw him away after using him like a rag. Since Bai Xiaowen said that he could be absorbed into White Phoenix territory, then his life should be guaranteed. As for what Bai Xiaowen said about giving him a position that wasn't high, how could Fu Jing still have the leeway to be picky? The fact that the position wasn't high meant that Bai Xiaowen had made the appropriate considerations and showed his sincerity. If Bai Xiaowen promised a high position, Fu Jing's heart would most likely beat like a drum. Besides, with the current development of White Phoenix territory, Bai Xiaowen's strength had completely surpassed Sky Mansion territory. Even in the dungeon, Fu Jing had learned a little about Star Alliance's movements from the guards. He knew that Bai Xiaowen had once again displayed his invincible might in Melting Bone territory. In time, White Phoenix territory would definitely become a first-rate territory in Star Alliance. If he didn't hug such a thick thigh, when would he? Chapter 1811. This old man is willing to join the White Phoenix territory and follow Lord Lu Wang's lead from now on. Please accept me. Fu Jing knelt on the ground, his attitude as sincere as it could be. Get up, don't use the Great Tang territory's methods on the White Phoenix territory. Bai Xiaowen's tone was gentle. As long as you are loyal to the White Phoenix territory and show sufficient ability, the White Phoenix territory will not treat you unfairly. Bai Xiaowen reached out and patted Fu Jing's shoulder lightly, withdrawing the Death God's imprisonment on Fu Jing's body. At the same time, he removed the remaining lightning energy on Fu Jing's old wounds. Fu Jing's body shook, feeling as if a huge stone had been lifted from his chest. His spiritual energy could finally be used again. There were many reasons why Fu Jing was afraid of Bai Xiaowen. Among them, the Death God's imprisonment was the most important one. Fu Jing had never seen such a terrifying energy. No matter how he struggled and tried, this black energy did not budge. It completely devoured the spiritual energy that Fu Jing had painstakingly gathered and tried to break free from the imprisonment. Because of this, Fu Jing had been unable to heal his old wounds during this period of time. Now, not only did Bai Xiaowen remove the imprisonment, he also removed the lightning energy. Fu Jing did not need to waste his spiritual energy to expel the lightning energy from his old wounds. Only his physical injuries were left, so it was natural that they would heal quickly. Bai Xiaowen handed a pill to Fu Jing. The latter did not hesitate and swallowed it in one gulp. In a few breaths, the medicinal effect spread and Fu Jing's pale face recovered its rosy color at a speed visible to the naked eye. Touching the old wounds on his back, they had already formed scabs and fell off inch by inch. Thank you for the medicine, Lord. Fu Jing was so grateful that he wanted to kneel again. Bai Xiaowen frowned, but did not reprimand Fu Jing again. Fu Jing had been in the Great Tang territory for so many years and had long been used to hypocritical performances and thorough etiquette. It was not easy to change everything in one day. As long as he was careful not to let him lead the White Phoenix territory astray, it would be fine. With spiritual energy, Fu Jing's body shook, his beard and the dirt on the surface of his body fell off one after another. Apart from the fact that his clothes were slightly tattered, his entire person had regained some of his sage-like aura. Sir Lord, if there's anything you need, please tell me. This old man will do his best to complete it. Bai Xiaowen nodded. Fu Jing, the plane you first came to is called the Dark Age. Let me ask you, is it more convenient for you to find people or things? Fu Jing replied, My lord, I'm new here and don't know much about this plane, so my prophecy abilities are a bit weaker than when I was in the Star Alliance. As for finding people and objects, it's easier to find objects under the same circumstances because there are too many people involved. Bai Xiaowen did not care about the ambush in Fu Jing's words. In any case, this old man would definitely perform well and win a sufficient pledge of allegiance. He was not afraid that he would not do his best. All right. Sigdelifa, bring it over. Sigdelifa complied and handed over a belt-like storage device to Fu Jing. This storage device looked like a storage belt, but it was actually just a storage ring. However, as Tyrant Nibra's storage ring, it was definitely larger than the norm. Fu Jing, the owner of this storage device, is already dead. I now need to find its corresponding storage space and the location where it overlaps with this plane, Bai Xiaowen said. Fu Jing nodded and hesitated for a moment before saying, Sir Lord, who left this behind? This old man needs to know as much as possible. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand, and a streak of true inner force turned into an illusion and transformed into Tyrant Nibra's demon body. This is a demon-level demon. Bai Xiaowen gave a simple introduction. Gulp. Fu Jing gulped down a mouthful of saliva, and besides feeling astonished in his heart, he even complained incessantly. He was shocked that Lord L.V. Wang could actually kill a demon-level demon. It was simply too unbelievable. What was bitter was that regarding demon-level demons, even if they were dead, prophecy spells were very troublesome. If he took this job, he would probably have to give up half his life. However, the new lord's ability to kill a demon-level demon strengthened Fu Jing's desire to join him. If he did not follow such a thick thigh, he would regret it for the rest of his life. In the future, whether he would be relied upon in the White Phoenix territory or be marginalized in a corner, it all depended on this wave. Sir Lord, this is a serious matter. I need to bathe in incense and calm my mind for divination. I cannot be disturbed in any way, Fu Jing bowed and said. All right, but give me a result as soon as possible. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and had Sigdelifa take Fu Jing to settle down. After Fu Jing left, Bai Xiaowen also stepped into the quiet room and continued to study the first page of the Black Book. The mysterious green polyhedron in the pitch-black space concluded the pattern of symbol connections through trial and error, and connected them together to form a complete line. The super brain played a powerful role in this process. If it were anyone else, they might have already been drowned in the endless symbols and combinations, but Bai Xiaowen relied on the super brain to ensure that he did not make repeated mistakes and quickly obtain the pattern of symbol combinations. Soon, Bai Xiaowen successfully traced the first line of the polyhedron, but the majority of the death god's force had been consumed. Bai Xiaowen did not continue to trace it for the time being and instead left the Black Book space, his soul sense returning to his knowledge sea. He wanted to test whether the Black Book's epiphany effect was stable. Not disappointing Bai Xiaowen, the moment his soul sense left the Black Book space, he once again had a feeling of epiphany. Bai Xiaowen immediately opened the second ancient book, the Great Void Scripture, and began to study it. The reason why he chose the Great Void Scripture was because the second part of the Art of War had not appeared yet, so if he wanted to reach level 17, it would be better to start with the Great Void Scripture. Perhaps he would be able to find another way. In addition, the Great Void Scripture's effect on Bai Xiaowen's personal combat strength was the most obvious. In order to prepare for the land of origin that his father Bai Yuantang mentioned, Bai Xiaowen had to focus on the Great Void Scripture. If the land of origin was the same as the spirit world, unable to summon a territory army, Bai Xiaowen would have to rely on his own strength to compete. If he did not prepare early, what was the point of complaining that it was unfair to control-type evolvers when the time came? While studying the Great Void Scripture, Bai Xiaowen deeply felt the Black Book's effect. It seemed to have made his understanding of the world's origin clearer. This was different from the light orb of enlightenment. This also meant that the epiphany provided by the Black Book did not conflict with the light orb of enlightenment. Bai Xiaowen felt that his comprehension of the Great Void Scripture had also sped up a lot, so he decided to take a gamble and directly use the God's Descendant level light orb of enlightenment. In any case, after completing the Savior's Descendant mission, Bai Xiaowen received a total of 3 God's Descendant level light orbs of enlightenment. Previously, he had already used the worst God's Descendant level 6C-, so it did not matter if he used another God's Descendant level 5B. After all, he still had the last and most precious God's Descendant level 6S plus light orb of enlightenment. The effect of the God's Descendant level 5B light orb of enlightenment was astonishing. It was as if he was possessed by a powerful being whose realm was many times higher than his, or as if he had become a powerful being himself. When reading the Great Void Scripture, Bai Xiaowen even felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if the Great Void Scripture was written by him, and studying it was like reviewing his own reading notes. Under the effect of the Black Book's epiphany, Bai Xiaowen directly pushed the Great Void Scripture to the 5th level, and was still advancing to a higher level. Unfortunately, the Black Book's epiphany time was limited, and the same was true for the Light Orb of Enlightenment. In the end, Bai Xiaowen was unable to continuously break through, and his second profession scripture stopped at the 5th level. However, he was not far from the 6th level, as if there was only a thin layer of paper separating him from it. Of course, this was just an illusion. When he really tried to break through, the 6th level was as far away as a mirage. This is enough. Bai Xiaowen stood up and stretched his limbs. If he could use the Black Book and the God's Descendant level Light Orb of Enlightenment again, he should be able to break through to the 6th level. However, Bai Xiaowen did not want to pay the price of a God's Descendant level Light Orb to break through to the 6th level. Moreover, if he broke through 2 levels in a row, there would inevitably be some negative factors that would affect his future. It was better to slowly cultivate with the help of the Black Book, accumulate more experience, and steadily step into the 6th level. The last remaining God's Descendant level Light Orb could be used when he wanted to become a high-order evolver. Bai Xiaowen checked the information sent by the Spirit Realm's law. Due to the breakthrough of your second profession scripture, the Great Void Scripture, your body has been tempered, your strength, dexterity, and vitality have increased by 15 points. Your spirit has increased by 25 points. Your true inner force limit has increased by 400 points. Your special mastery, spiritual force mastery, has been raised to specialist level 3. You have a new understanding of the immortal arts branch, body nurturing. You have a new understanding of the immortal arts branch, chi nurturing. You have a new understanding of. The last message was all about the 6 major immortal arts branches, 3 nurturing and 3 refining, each of which had new content. The most important one was the immortal arts branch, talisman crafting. Bai Xiaowen had obtained 3 mid-level immortal art formations, called the Star Duel Immortal Formation, the Blue Sky Immortal Formation, and the Thousand Swords Immortal Formation, each of which had their own uses. Now that the Art of War was at level 16 and the Scripture of the Great Void was at level 15, Bai Xiaowen's personal strength had also increased by a lot. Strength 178, Dexterity 185, Vitality 185, Spirit 216. The basic attributes represented the strength of the body, which was the most important thing for evolvers to display their strength, so they would be strengthened with every level up. His true inner force had increased to 4,600 points. This was a qualitative change. The upper limit of a high-level King-tier Demon King's spiritual energy was about 4,000 to 5,000 points. Next, Bai Xiaowen could use Dark Resurrection to pull up a high-level King-tier Demon King to serve him. Bai Xiaowen pushed open the door and walked out. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse outside. Delifa Sig had been guarding by his side loyally. When he saw Bai Xiaowen appear, he bowed and said, "Congratulations, Master, on reaching a new level. Delifa, your Chinese is not bad." Bai Xiaowen smiled. "You can see that I have broken through?" Delifa Sig said, "Master, although you have concealed your aura very well, there are obvious changes in your eyes." Bai Xiaowen knew that this was the inevitable reaction of his body after his spirit broke through the 200 points. This included the increase in his physical strength, dexterity, and other attributes. He would be able to fully adapt in a day or 2. "Where is Fu Jing?" Bai Xiaowen asked the question he was most concerned about. "He has finished his divination and is waiting for Master to summon him. Let him come over. Also, invite Brother Xia over." Bai Xiaowen was invigorated. Fu Jing did not spend too much time on the results of his divination this time. This provided Bai Xiaowen with enough time to prepare. In the new City of Silver's main hall, Bai Xiaowen received Fu Jing while refining talismans. "This is the result of my divination, my lord." Fu Jing coughed repeatedly. His face was as pale as a sheet, and his aura was somewhat dispirited. Clearly, prying into the secrets of the heavens was risky to begin with. It involved a dead god's descendant and a portion of death's remains. With such a huge responsibility, it would be considered light for Fu Jing to spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. It was already good enough that his life was not taken. Very good. Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly as he looked at the location that Fu Jing had marked with a trembling hand on the map. "If your divination is accurate, not only will I accept you into the White Phoenix territory, I will also put you in an important position and provide you with sufficient cultivation resources." "Thank you, my lord. I will definitely do my best to repay my lord's magnanimity." Fu Jing shed tears of gratitude once again. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and said to Xia Feng, "Brother Xia, make a trip according to the location on the map. I estimate that the Purple Shadow Gang will not arrive before you. Once you reach the place, hide and keep watch. Do not act rashly." Xia Feng nodded slightly. He understood that Bai Xiaowen had sent him to plant an eye at the target location. If it were anyone else, they might think that Bai Xiaowen was using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. However, Xia Feng did not have such superfluous thoughts. With a wave of his hand, he transformed into a spatial ripple and disappeared from the spot. Bai Xiaowen continued to instruct Delifa Sig, immediately reorganize the army and get into formation to prepare to depart. Also, ask Rocher's Crow to come over and tell him that it is time to fulfill the agreement. Delifa Sig received the order and left. Bai Xiaowen continued to refine immortal talismans in the main hall. As he watched Bai Xiaowen give out orders while leisurely refining immortal talismans, the nearby Fu Jing's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets from shock. Hua Xia's talisman refining technique was very mysterious to ordinary people. However, Fu Jing was knowledgeable and had some understanding of it. He himself had even learned some tricks of talisman refining. Refining talismans required a calm mind. The slightest carelessness would cause the entire talisman to collapse and become scrap. No matter how one looked at it, the talismans that Bai Xiaowen was refining now looked superior. They were definitely not simple talismans. Then the question was, how did Bai Xiaowen do it so easily? Was he not afraid of being distracted? Fu Jing could not figure it out, but he was even more in awe of this mysterious new boss. He thought to himself, Lord Lu Wang doesn't seem to like flattering people. Should I change my way of thinking? While Fu Jing was thinking, a magic fire crow quietly flew in from outside the hall. Seeing Xia Feng, Bai Xiaowen heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. "Brother Xia, how's the situation?" "No one has been here," Mr. Xia Feng said. "It seems that we're lucky," Bai Xiaowen said with a smile. "If we're lucky, it means that the enemy's luck is bad," Mr. Xia Feng said. "Can the Purple Shadow Gang find this place?" Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. "They took away the witch Kelluan. This witch is also a leader of the prophecy faction. As a native of this world, her prophecy ability is much stronger than Fu Jing's." Fu Jing shrank his head and didn't dare to have any objections. Mr. Xia Feng frowned and asked, "Since Kelluan's prophecy ability is stronger, the Purple Shadow Gang should be able to find this place easily. Why haven't they appeared yet?" Bai Xiaowen shook his head and smiled. "Kelluan and the Purple Shadow Gang have never cooperated before. She wouldn't have agreed to help them. Although in the end, Kelluan still couldn't withstand the pressure from the Purple Shadow Gang. She's a smart woman. She would definitely try her best to delay the Purple Shadow Gang. After all, the prophecy faction is a very subjective field. It wouldn't be a problem for her to find an excuse to delay them for a few days." From the fact that the Purple Shadow Gang didn't hesitate to impersonate Bai Xiaowen to trick Kelluan, it could be seen that the Purple Shadow Gang didn't have any prophecy faction evolvers. This was also one of the factors that Bai Xiaowen had taken into consideration. Bai Xiaowen wasn't sure how the witch Kelluan would choose to face the Purple Shadow Gang. Would she work together and use their strength to fight against Bai Xiaowen, the new demon king of the City of Silver? Or would she choose to trust Bai Xiaowen and help Bai Xiaowen attack the Purple Shadow Gang? Therefore, Bai Xiaowen had sent Mr. Xiafeng ahead of time to spy on the situation. Since the Purple Shadow Gang hadn't found this place yet, it meant that Kelluan had chosen the latter. This was also because the two sides had worked together before, and Bai Xiaowen had fulfilled his promise to give the United Kingdom of Humans space to develop freely. In comparison, of course, Bai Xiaowen was more worthy of Kelluan's trust. Bai Xiaowen's spiritual senses spread out widely, and he quickly found the overlap point, which was the space corresponding to Nibra's storage ring in the Dark Age dimension. It was an inconspicuous piece of bark on a lonely tree. Bai Xiaowen wasn't in a hurry to get it. His spiritual senses continued to spread out. With the help of the art of mental cultivation, Bai Xiaowen's spiritual senses search range had greatly increased, reaching about 50 kilometers. Soon, he found another powerful aura more than 10 kilometers away. It was mainly dark energy. There was no doubt that it was the thinker, Rosher, who was hard at work. Bai Xiaowen didn't want to disturb Rosher. It wouldn't be appropriate to scare him away. A row of immortal talismans appeared in his hand. With a wave of his hand, the immortal talismans took root and quietly enveloped the area. This time, Bai Xiaowen chose the Blue Sky Immortal Formation. It was a relatively powerful trapping formation among mid-level immortal formations, and it also had a certain degree of area control. In fact, the Blue Sky Immortal Formation was an upgraded version of the Eight Gates Immortal Formation. The biggest difference between the two was that the Blue Sky Immortal Formation could seal higher priority teleportation skills. Not long after, the demon fire crow flew over. Ka! Christos, my part is done. The demon fire crow flew to Bai Xiaowen's shoulder and spat out a green runestone. Ka, this is the runic key to activate the demon fire portal. You only need to inject spiritual power to open it. The other end of the demon fire portal is connected to the new City of Silver. Thank you, Bai Xiaowen said with a smile. You don't have to thank me. It's enough as long as we can destroy those hateful outsiders. The demon fire crow caught a few times but didn't leave. He stood on the armrest of Bai Xiaowen's silver throne, as if he was interested in watching the upcoming battle. To Rosher, Bai Xiaowen and the Purple Shadow Gang were both hateful. But if he had to pick a more hateful group, it would undoubtedly be the Purple Shadow Gang. It was true that both groups of outsiders had killed one of his incarnations. But Rosher's first incarnation had been killed because he had run over to meddle in the affairs of Bai Xiaowen and Isman. Rosher himself was in the wrong and had no reason to be resentful. But Rosher's second incarnation had been killed purely by the Purple Shadow Gang. It was a disaster that fell from the sky while he was sitting at home. Such an unexpected disaster naturally made Rosher even angrier. Bai Xiaowen's Blue Sky Immortal Formation was quickly set up. What do we do next? Xiafeng asked. Hide your aura and wait for the enemy to appear, Bai Xiaowen said. He gently pressed between his eyebrows, and a powerful spiritual sense spread out, hiding himself, Xiafeng, Fu Jing, and Rosher's demon fire crow. Bai Xiaowen looked at the demon fire crow again. Hey, where's your original body? Do you know how to hide? Don't poke your head out and ruin my plans. The demon fire crow said, Caw. Don't worry. After setting up the demon fire teleportation formation, my original body left far away. Besides, my concealment skills are better than yours. Even if I stay here, there won't be any problem. Oh, then how did your second incarnation get killed? Bai Xiaowen opened Rosher's wound. Caw. That was because I accidentally revealed the location of the laboratory. Rosher's crow muttered unhappily. In the land of the far north, in the glaciers and snowfields. In an ice cellar, which Kelluan sat quietly on her knees, wiping the crystal ball in front of her. Your Excellency Witch, the boss's patience is running out. A gray shadow stepped into the ice cellar, and a feminine voice sounded. It's been 10 days, and you still haven't divined the location of that item? Witch Kellowan's voice was weak. I'm sorry. You didn't provide any more clues about that item. You said you were looking for the overlapping point of the storage space, but you didn't have the corresponding storage equipment. Gray Shadow impatiently interrupted Kellowan. I don't have that much time to waste with you. It seems that I'll have to make you suffer a little. Gray Shadow raised his hand, and a rope of gray gas wrapped itself around Witch Kellowan's body like a poisonous snake, hanging her in the air. As Gray Shadow exerted more force, the gray gas rope gradually tightened. Witch Kellowan's skin became paler, but her face was flushed red, as if blood was about to drip out. Trembu! Let go! A shout was heard, and Gray Shadow's body trembled, and the gray gas rope disappeared. Kellowan's body fell, and below her was a solid ice surface. However, a black shadow shot over like lightning, and in an ambiguous position, picked up Kellowan. This black figure was wrapped in a black robe, but the cloak was open, revealing the face of a young and handsome golden-haired youth. Boss! The black shadow wrapped in a black robe knelt on one knee and saluted. Trembu, how many times have I told you to treat Miss Kellowan with enough respect? The blonde youth frowned, and a gentle spirit energy was injected into Kellowan's body, helping her relieve the pain from the rope. Boss, I was just in a hurry. Gray Shadow smiled awkwardly. Miss Kellowan, I'm sorry, Trembu misunderstood me. The secret society's true purpose is to help you save this continent. Let humans become the true masters of this continent. The blonde youth smiled. What I'm asking you to do now is very important, please cooperate. After Kellowan caught her breath, she stood up straight again, still expressionless, and without any anger, she said calmly, I need time, there has to be a time limit, right? The golden-haired, black-robed youth was secretly discouraged when he saw that Kevin did not fall for his tricks and that his high charm had no effect on her. He shrugged helplessly. Although I'm not a prophet, I do know some common knowledge about prophecies. Generally speaking, prophecies don't take too long. 10 days to half a month is the limit. Miss Kellowan, if this goes on, I'm going to doubt your sincerity. Kellowan gently stroked the crystal ball. Soon. I'll get the answer in a few days. Ha! Very good. Then we won't disturb you in the meantime. The blonde youth waved his hand and left with Gray Shadow. A day later, Kellowan successfully prophesied the location of the target. The blonde youth was overjoyed, and immediately led his teammates to the target location. This organization, known as the Secret Society, had a total of 7 people after gathering. All of them were wearing masks that matched the color of their clothes. The purple shadow man who ambushed Xia Feng and stole Nibra's magic core was also among them. The mount of this group of people was an ancient pterosaur with a wingspan of dozens of meters. The passenger seats were spacious, and the secret society also brought the witch Kellowan with them, mainly to prevent them from being tricked by Kellowan. If they gave a fake address, it would be easier to catch Kellowan and interrogate him. Brother, we've wasted too much time on Kellowan. I'm worried that something will happen, Purple Shadow said quietly. His voice was low and dry, and it was impossible to tell if he was a man or a woman. What do you mean? The blonde youth was wearing a black leather mask, and he turned his face to the side and asked. I don't know, I'm just worried about LV Wang's movements. Purple Shadow shook his head, he couldn't tell where his worry came from. LV Wang isn't simple, from the perspective of the younger generation, LV Wang is indeed very outstanding. Sixth brother, you didn't even manage to steal Nibra's magic core from him and Xia Feng. This is probably one of your few failures in recent years, right? The blonde youth chuckled. However, we're in the dark, and LV Wang is in the open. Now that he doesn't have the witch Kellowan, how can he find the Reaper's bone? Prophecies are rare, but not impossible, Purple Shadow said. I'm worried that LV Wang will beat us to it. After all, he seized the space ring and Nibra's magic core, so he has enough clues. If he's vigilant enough about my appearance and realizes that our real goal is to steal the Reaper's bone, he'll definitely invite a prophecy evolver from the Starlink at all costs. don't forget that he has a resonance teleportation formation, unlike us. You have a point, although I don't think LV Wang is that sharp. The blonde youth thought for a moment. We can't rule out the possibility that LV Wang took the Reaper's bone in advance, but if that's the case, the witch Kelawan's divination. He turned to look at Kelawan, who was sitting in the middle of the circle. Kelawan stroked the crystal ball and said expressionlessly, I only know that the thing they're looking for hasn't moved. She's not lying, a yellow-robed figure said after a moment of silence. Ah, looks like we're in luck. Another person whistled. Chapter 1813. The atmosphere among the people of the secret society became more relaxed. Ziying was still a little worried. He said in a low voice, will LV Wang use the Reaper's bone as bait to lure us into a trap? A trap? The blonde youth laughed heartily. Even if he wants to, he doesn't have the ability. Sixth brother, when you tried to snatch Nibra's magic core, although you didn't succeed, you came and went as you pleased. Have you ever seen LV Wang have the ability to make you stay? The others laughed. They seemed to think that Ziying was making a fuss over nothing. Gray Shadow said, we are all chosen by the gods. We have all been given special abilities by the gods. Even if LV Wang is rumored to be very powerful, he is not chosen by the gods. After all, he is just a mortal. He can't do anything. Ziying saw that his companions of the secret society were all full of confidence. He couldn't help but frown. Since everyone says so, I don't want to boost the morale of others and diminish our own. Ziying sighed. I have one last suggestion. We don't need to mobilize so many people to look for the Reaper's bone. We only need to send 1 or 2 people. This way, even if we fall into the enemy's trap, we won't be wiped out. Does LV Wang have the ability to wipe out the secret society? The rest of the people showed their disapproval. It was no wonder that these people were so confident. It was because they were able to traverse the high-difficulty planes. Relying on the gods' favor and other strong backgrounds, they rarely met a worthy opponent. The problem is, who will go? Gray Shadow said unhappily. Sixth brother, everyone knows what you were thinking. Whoever gets the Reaper's bone will be able to show off in front of the gods. So it's not fair for anyone to go alone. Boss has taken this into consideration, so he asked us to go together. You can't ignore Boss's painstaking efforts just because of some unnecessary danger, right? Seventh brother is right. He wants to wipe out the secret society. LV Wang won't be able to do it even if he trained for another 10 years. Ziying said seriously. After all, this is half of LV Wang's home ground. He is also a commander-type evolver. If he brings an army to surround us, we will definitely be defeated. Don't joke around. If he brings an army to hide here, how can we not sense it? Do you think we're all deaf and blind? At the very least, even if we are surrounded by his army, we can still leave whenever we want. Seeing that the others were refuting Ziying's words, the blonde youth nodded and comforted, all right, sixth brother. You don't have to worry too much. Lu Wang is at most a newcomer who has just joined the Star Alliance for a little over a year. Our secret society, on the other hand, has been a top organization in the Star Alliance for more than 10 years. You can't be scared, right? Ziying could only accept everyone's persuasion and didn't insist on his own opinion. The pterosaur flew above the Hebrew plateau. The distance is already very close. Second brother, have you found any traces of the army? The second leader of the team was an evolver in orange clothes and sunglasses. He adjusted his glasses and said, not only is there no army, but there is also no aura of a single expert. Okay, let's all move out and hide our auras. The golden-haired, black-robed youth was the first to jump off the pterosaur and fly forward. As he flew, his figure gradually faded away, and his aura was quickly concealed. Boss is so cautious. He's being too careful. The other members of the secret society all followed and entered a state of concealment. The golden-haired, black-robed youth turned around and said telepathically, sixth brother, what are you spacing out for? Hurry up and follow us. Zing frowned and said, "Big brother, you guys go first. I'll stay here and guard the pterosaur. Hey, do whatever you want." The golden-haired, black-robed youth was also somewhat impatient. After all, Zing had repeatedly questioned his authority, and this was not a good sign. Anyway, the process of collecting the Reaper's bone had attracted the attention of the gods. Zing had given up the opportunity to appear in front of the gods, so there was no need for others to worry about him. With this thought in mind, the golden-haired, black-robed youth directly led the rest of his teammates and covered Kelowon. They concealed their auras and flew toward the target location. Zing narrowed his eyes and looked at the distant sky, but there was an indescribable and inexplicable feeling of unease in his heart. That day, when he attacked Xia Feng and seized Nibra's magic core, it seemed like a fleeting moment, but Zing had been waiting for this for a long time. What was originally a sure-win operation had been thwarted by Bai Xiaowen's sudden change of plans. Zing had suffered the greatest setback in recent years, and the shock it brought to him was something that no one else could understand. In particular, Bai Xiaowen's several god-level predictions had made him unable to escape even with his master-level movement technique. In the end, he had to use his God-given ability to escape. Even now, Zing still felt a lingering fear when he thought about it. There was a sudden clap of thunder in the sky, and suddenly, rays of talisman light shot up into the sky. In the blink of an eye, a magnificent immortal formation was announced to be formed. Zing's eyes suddenly widened. This scene of the formation rising and taking shape was inexplicably familiar to him. LV Wang really prepared an ambush. Why is he so confident? Zing found it difficult to understand. Since LV Wang had grasped this location and made an ambush in advance, it meant that LV Wang was one step ahead of the secret society and had found the Reaper's bone. Why didn't he just take the Reaper's bone and put it in his pocket? The result of which Kelowon's divination was that the Reaper's bone had not been touched. This was also confirmed by the team's third brother, who was an evolver who was proficient in spiritual monitoring. It was definitely not a fake news released by which Kelowon. There was absolutely no problem with the authenticity of the news. LV Wang is so confident that he can keep the secret society here? Ziying, who had originally wanted to join the battle, forcibly suppressed his thoughts and prepared to observe for a while longer. In the next second, a huge spatial fluctuation came. Ziying's face was filled with shock. Such a strong spatial fluctuation. I'm afraid it's a large-scale war-level teleportation spell. How is this possible? Such a war-level teleportation portal shouldn't be controlled by an evolver. Ziying immediately made a decision and turned to leave. LV Wang. Come out and talk. The blonde, black-robed youth and the other members of the secret society found themselves in a formation and immediately knew that they had fallen into a trap. However, the six of them did not panic too much. In a cluster of light from the formation, Bai Xiaowen and Xia Feng appeared. You actually know my name. Although Bai Xiaowen was somewhat surprised, it made sense when he thought about it. The leader of Heaven's Sanctum, Mengchuan, knew that he had conquered the Dark Age plane. Since these people had designs on the Reaper's bone, they would definitely have collected information beforehand. Who are you? Bai Xiaowen asked directly. You don't need to know that, the blonde, black-robed youth said coldly. LV Wang, you think you can keep us here with this formation? You must be dreaming. You can try to escape. Bai Xiaowen did not mind the other party's harsh tone. This Sky Immortal formation is the highest level I can set up. If this can't keep you here, then I don't need to waste my energy. Chapter 1814. Blue Sky Immortal Array? The name sounds quite grand, but I don't know if the power and priority of the array lives up to its name. Second brother, who was wearing sunglasses and an orange robe, said. Haha, LV Wang's ability to set up arrays is quite good. It can trap divine creatures. The blonde, black-robed youth nodded and praised, but then he changed the topic. Unfortunately, it's useless to us. Brother Six has already tried it himself last time. The so-called immortal formation is just a name to scare people in front of our God-given abilities, Gray Shadow said with certainty. LV Wang, you told us to run. I'd like to see if you have the ability to force us to run, the blonde, black-robed youth said to Xiafeng. Also, you're Xiafeng, right? You're a well-known figure in the Star Alliance, but you actually listen to a junior like LV Wang. What a joke. Xiafeng looked at the other party calmly. He just silently regulated his breathing and did not say a word. Bai Xiaowen also frowned as he looked at the six of them. He personally felt the other party's arrogant attitude. Even if they were ambushed and in a dangerous place surrounded by arrays, the six of them did not look nervous at all. In terms of strength, the six of them were definitely very strong, and they also had the so-called God-given ability. They might be the same as Xiafeng, the chosen of a certain god. But this kind of attitude of looking down on everything and looking down on everything was hard to say what was good about it. Bai Xiaowen had nothing to say to this group of people. He directly ordered Heidleifer to activate the magic fire teleportation array through telepathy. About 10 kilometers away from the blue sky immortal array, the grand magic fire teleportation portal was instantly formed. Teams of undead soldiers formed a phalanx and methodically passed through the magic fire teleportation portal, crossing thousands of miles to arrive at the Hebrew Plateau. This scene was almost exactly the same as when Silver King Isman had teleported his army remotely and blocked Bai Xiaowen's group in the New Silver City. However, Bai Xiaowen back then was prepared in advance. The people in front of him were obviously not prepared in advance. They were not even mentally prepared to face Bai Xiaowen's 10,000-strong undead army. This has got to be a lie. A member of the secret society mumbled, how can a post-human master the technology of such a large portal? Boss, we still have a hostage, Gray Shadow whispered to the blonde, black-robed youth. The golden-haired, black-robed youth glanced at Kellowan who was trapped in the middle. He didn't open his mouth to object, but instead acquiesced. His gentlemanly demeanor and gentleness from before were all just a mask. Gray Shadow knew that his boss wanted to save face, so he took a step forward and shouted, Lu Wang, your mistress is in my hands. If you know what's good for you, you'd better remove the formation and retreat. Otherwise, I'll kill the hostage. Bai Xiaowen looked over in surprise, then chuckled, hurry up and kill the hostage. Since Kellowan brought you here, it means that she has betrayed me. Even if you don't kill her, she won't have a good ending in my hands. Brother Xia, we seem to have overestimated this group of people. They can even say such foolish words. Which Kellowan lowered her head and didn't say anything. The 6 members of the secret society looked at each other. They all felt that Lu Wang was right. Using which Kellowan to threaten the other party was completely useless. It would only make them laugh. In their eyes, spiritualists were just NPCs that could be thrown away after being used. If an post-human gave up the benefits at hand for the life of a spiritualist, they would definitely laugh their heads off. In particular, Kevin was no longer of any value to LV Wang. Lu Wang had already found this place one step ahead of them, which meant that he definitely had someone with the power of prophecy. Why would he still need Kellowan? The 6 members of the secret society quickly extinguished the thought of using Kellowan as a hostage. The blonde, black-robed youth waved his hand and sent Kellowan out of the group of 6. He then said in a low voice, the few of us will try our best to stall for time. Second brother, go find the bone of the Grim Reaper. After we get it, we'll immediately use our God-given abilities to escape. This was the only way out of desperation. On the other side, the undead army at the magic fire portal had finished gathering. Sigurd Delafa led the army and advanced toward the Sky Immortal formation. Taking advantage of this time, the other 5 members of the secret society, except for the orange figure of second brother and the purple figure of sixth brother, charged toward Bai Xiaowen and Xiafeng at the same time. 2 of them, Crimson Shadow and Blue Shadow, were long-range attack-type spellcasters. With a wave of their hands, beams of magic light shot out. The other 3, including the blonde, black-robed youth, were all close combat experts. Under the cover of the magic bombardment, they attacked Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and a large number of summoned creatures formed a formation in the air. At the same time, a silver throne appeared. Bai Xiaowen sat cross-legged on it. True inner force surged out and turned into a 3-foot-long wall of air. The magic light bombarded Bai Xiaowen's true inner force wall and only caused ripples. Xiaofeng pulled out the broken sword on his back. His figure was like a flying immortal, appearing and disappearing. When he appeared, he was already behind the two spellcasters, Crimson Shadow and Blue Shadow. Then, it was a casual slash. However, in the hearts of Crimson Shadow and Blue Shadow, this slash sealed off all their escape routes. It was as if it contained countless changes. No matter which direction they fled in, it was as if they were sending themselves to the edge of the blade. Master level, Crimson Shadow and Blue Shadow felt a chill in their hearts. Crimson Shadow immediately flashed and moved 100 feet horizontally. Only a few strands of hair and half of his mask were cut off by Xiaofeng. Blue Shadow, on the other hand, propped up a pitch-black magic shield. Around the magic shield, there were traces of dark energy lingering. Its strength was shocking. Xiaofeng waved his hand casually and the magic shield was cut open like tofu. Blue Shadow was so scared that he almost peed his pants. The moment the sword light touched his body stretched and shrank like a worm. Xiaofeng's sword light swept across Blue Shadow's body, but it was like a wave. The expected scene of Blue Shadow being cut in half did not occur. Is this your God-given ability? Xiaofeng dodged an ice spear shot by Crimson Shadow in the distance and still had the mind to speak. There was no sign of disorder in his breathing. Boss, come and help me. Blue Shadow hurriedly transmitted a message with a hint of nervousness in his voice. I used the magic mirror once. Hold on a little longer. You guys hold back, Xiaofeng. On the other side, the golden-haired young man in the black robe also exploded with tyrannical battle power. He held a flower sword in his hand and waved a fierce battle energy stab. The battle energy stab rotated at high speed and made a frightening buzzing sound. It directly penetrated Bai Xiaowen's true inner force defense and stabbed toward Bai Xiaowen. However, in the next second, Bai Xiaowen and the silver throne disappeared into the air, leaving behind only a sword mark that emitted a faint light. The undead army has entered the battlefield. Sigleifer's voice sounded in Bai Xiaowen's heart. Chapter 1815. Roger that. Bai Xiaowen had never intended to have a fair duel with this group of people from the very beginning. Making use of the background of a large army and displaying the advantages of a commander was the way to go. His deal with Rosher, asking him to build a long-distance magic fire teleportation array on the basis of the magic fire teleportation tower in the new city of Silver, was to take the army by surprise. The only problem was that the magic fire teleportation array could not be built within the range of the Blue Sky Immortal Array. There was a fundamental conflict between the two. The Blue Sky Immortal Array could isolate teleportation spells with a priority as high as 13, while the Magic Fire Teleportation Array's priority was exactly 12. Of course, there was another point to be made. The isolation here referred to the isolation of the interior and exterior. The interior of the Blue Sky Immortal Array formed a sealed space of its own. The people inside could not escape from the array through teleportation. However, within the sealed space formed by the array, the use of the law of space within a small area was not affected. This way, it would not interfere with Xiaofeng's combat power. Bai Xiaowen looked at the undead army that had arrived and was waiting outside the Blue Sky Immortal Array. Due to the barrier of the Immortal Array, Bai Xiaowen could not control the army. Bai Xiaowen could only control the Blue Sky Immortal Array and suppress a corner of the array's power, causing one of the light pillars of the Immortal Talisman to dim. Taking advantage of the gap in this corner, the undead army's phalanxes swarmed in. Chance. The Grey Shadow from the Secret Society suddenly lost the will to fight. Although the Secret Society usually addressed each other as brothers, their relationship was actually very weak. If they did not believe in the same God, these people would not be together at all. Even if they were sworn brothers, it was reasonable for them to separate when disaster struck. Grey Shadow had secretly tried just now. He could still use his God-given ability, but he could not break through the barrier of the blue sky immortal array. He had been very anxious and did not tell the others about this discovery. Now that there was a chance to escape, Gray Shadow would of course not let it go. He quickly flew to the vicinity of the crack of the immortal array. Crimson Shadow and Blue Shadow shared the same thoughts as Gray Shadow. The two long-range spellcasters were already terrified by Xia Feng and did not dare to continue fighting. However, just as the three of them flew to the crack of the immortal formation, a spiritual giant suddenly took shape and slapped at them like it was swatting a fly. The powerful energy lock made the air around the three of them stagnate like a steel plate. Magic Mirror. Gray Shadow's reaction was the fastest. He immediately activated his God-given ability, Magic Mirror. His entire body twisted strangely like a worm. The giant's palm swept past the Gray Shadow's body as if it had only hit a shadow. The Gray Shadow rushed towards the crack in the immortal array. How sneaky! There's only enough time for two undead phalanxes to enter. Bai Xiaowen's true inner force shot out from his fingertips and into the ground, controlling the changes in the blue sky immortal formation. The dim beam of light shone again. The original position of the crack quickly changed and turned back into an impenetrable wall. Gray Shadow crashed into the protective wall of the immortal array, triggering the counterattack of the blue sky immortal formation. His body fell down like a kite with a broken string. What? Behind him, Crimson Shadow and Blue Shadow were extremely shocked. When Gray Shadow tried to break out of the immortal array, he was in the God-given ability, Magic Mirror. His entire body should be in the subspace and should not be obstructed by anything in the main plane. However, why was he blocked by the immortal array when he was in the Magic Mirror state? This immortal array was actually so powerful. The appearance of this situation was a shocking blow to the morale of the members of the secret society. Originally, they thought that with the God-given ability, they could do whatever they wanted. They could enter and leave this immortal array freely and their safety was guaranteed. But now, their safety was nothing more than a piece of paper. Next, they would have to face the crafty LV Wang, the combat genius Xia Feng, and the siege of more than 10,000 undead army. They could not escape as easily as before. Delifa Sig, control the undead army and arrange them in 8 directions. All phalanxes, as long as you wait for the corresponding array door to appear, enter immediately. Bai Xiaowen ordered through the mental link. Of course, Sig Delifa did as instructed. Soon, the beam of light from the immortal talisman in the other corner was also suppressed by Bai Xiaowen, and a crack appeared in the array. The third undead army quickly rushed into the array. Crimson Shadow and Blue Shadow quickly used flash, trying to use this opportunity to escape. However, their flashing figures were shot back pathetically halfway. The moment the undead army entered, Bai Xiaowen immediately changed the array and closed the crack. With Bai Xiaowen controlling the crack, the members of the secret society would not have enough time to escape. Then, the fourth, the fifth, one by one, the undead phalanxes entered the array space. The entry of each phalanx represented the combat power of a king-level powerhouse, reinforcing Bai Xiaowen. These spirit power giants formed by joint attacks were Bai Xiaowen's greatest reliance in the Dark Age. Boss, what should we do? The several evolvers of the secret society were being chased by Xia Feng with a saber. They were already in a precarious situation. They were also afraid that they would not be able to escape under the obstruction of the array. Therefore, there was a hint of panic in their voices. The blonde black-robed youth had been chasing Bai Xiaowen with all his might. His speed was also shockingly fast. Bai Xiaowen could use teleportation to instantly open up a distance of several hundred meters. However, in less than a second, the blonde black-robed youth would catch up to him again. Powerful speed coupled with powerful attack power. This blonde black-robed youth was much stronger than the so-called number 2 assassin of the Interstellar Alliance, Qi Zheng. Bai Xiaowen had also tried to use lightning to control him. However, when he thought about how the blonde black-robed youth must also have that strange ability, the magic mirror, it would be bad if he was caught off guard and took the opportunity to close in on him and injure him. It was better to run as fast as he could. Bai Xiaowen had to split his attention to control the 10 spirit power giants and also control the array. His mind was almost stretched to the limit. Since lightning was most likely useless against his opponent, Bai Xiaowen did not bother to use such a useless method. As long as he could ensure that he did not die, once the spirit power giants were fully formed, he would be able to overpower his opponent openly and crush his opponent. This was the tactic with the highest chance of success. However, it looked a little cowardly and would not win beautifully. For a pragmatist like Bai Xiaowen, winning ugly was better than losing beautifully. The blonde black-robed youth's thinking was also very simple. Although he was being played like a dog by Bai Xiaowen's teleportation, he was still able to rely on his superior speed to keep up with him. In his mind, he was actually thinking, let's see how long you can last. Do you really think teleportation spells are free? In fact, Bai Xiaowen could really last for a long time. His teleportation was not the same as teleportation, so it did not consume as much energy. Coupled with the double recovery speed of the Silver Throne, Bai Xiaowen could continue to lead his opponent around for another 15 minutes without a problem. The problem was that the people of the secret society could not hold on for another 15 minutes. Suddenly, the second in command of the secret society, who was wearing orange clothes and sunglasses, said, "Found him." Chapter 18:16. Nibra's storage device was actually just an inconspicuous piece of tree bark that corresponded to the overlapping point in this plane. Bai Xiaowen had found this location long ago. With the help of the heart-nurturing technique, his searching ability was far beyond that of ordinary spiritual-type evolvers. Bai Xiaowen didn't touch the Reaper's bone in your storage device, but that didn't mean he didn't do anything to that piece of tree bark. Just as the second brother of the secret society reached out excitedly to pick that piece of tree bark, the tree bark suddenly disappeared. Only a glowing sword mark was left on the spot. Bai Xiaowen crushed the tree bark and extended his consciousness to take out the items in the storage device. In this storage device, other than the Reaper's bone, there were also some rare materials. They were basically the essence of the remains of powerful magical beasts. Although Nibra's was delicious, his list of recipes was not completely unsuitable. For example, he definitely wouldn't eat the teeth of high-grade magical beasts, the bone orb of the demonic dragon, and other items that were not delicious and hard to digest. However, these items were quite valuable, so Nibra's wouldn't just throw them away. He simply stuffed them into his storage device in case they came in handy when he was forging equipment. Having been a tyrant in the Dark Age for so many years, Nibra's had naturally eaten a large number of high-grade magical beasts and left behind a large number of materials. Together with the Reaper's bone, they all benefited Bai Xiaowen. He directly transferred them into his storage bracelet. Bastard! The leader of the secret society, the blonde young man in the black robe, was enraged. 2 pitch-black auras suddenly spread out from his back and turned into 2 extra black energy arms. The energy lines on the arms flickered as they sped up and caught up with Bai Xiaowen. The flower sword stabbed out and instantly split into 4 high-speed spiraling combat aura spikes, attacking Bai Xiaowen from different directions. This was the true strength of the blonde young man in the black robe. He had never used his full strength. Because in his plan, it was enough to buy time for his second brother to get the Reaper's bone. He didn't want to fight to the death with Bai Xiaowen. His real goal was to escape after taking advantage of the situation. But now, the situation had changed. The 4 combat aura spikes resonated with each other and caused a slight vibration in the space. This slight vibration would cause many low-priority spatial spells, such as Blink and Teleport, to lose their effect temporarily. Transposition Daoist technique was one of them. Under the full-force attack of the blonde, black-robed youth, Bai Xiaowen could no longer dodge as easily as before. A spatial ripple flashed, and Xia Feng's figure appeared beside Bai Xiaowen. With a slash of the broken blade, a pitch-black spatial crack opened. The 4 combat aura spikes were all sucked into the extra-dimensional space. Bai Xiaowen smiled. His cooperation with Xia Feng wasn't good enough, so there was no need for him to come to their rescue in this situation. Now that the undead army had entered the range of the blue sky immortal formation, Bai Xiaowen could control a dozen or so king-class experts at the same time. Blocking the 4 combat chi needles would be no problem at all. Xia Feng's arrival gave Qi Ying, Lan Ning, and the others a chance to catch their breath. But it was too late. Bai Xiaowen's mind moved, and the 2 spirit giants' palms overlapped and chased after Qi Ying, Lan Ning, and the others, making up for the gap left by Xia Feng. The power of the Immortals Array also gradually increased as it operated. In the Immortals Array, spirit chains with dark golden symbols could be seen faintly operating in the space of the array. Each spiritual energy chain was actually a manifestation of the formation's power. Anyone who came into contact with it would have to bear the corresponding effects of the formation. Qi Ying was first grazed by one of the array's chains. His body suddenly stiffened, and his speed decreased by more than half. With this decrease in speed, he no longer had enough speed to escape from the spirit giant's attack. After using all his strength to use the flash spell and the god-given magic mirror to dodge 2 attacks, Qi Ying, who had exhausted all his means, was suddenly slapped by the spirit giant's palms. He was sandwiched in the middle like a mosquito. Even though Qi Ying had the flexibility that the people of the spiritual realm could not compare to, he was an evolver and only had the strength of a lord. His spiritual power, defense and physical strength were all at this level, and it was impossible for him to exceed it by too much. Although the spirit giant's attack was primitive, its energy level was equivalent to that of a high-level king-level powerhouse. Qi Ying took a solid hit from the king-level powerhouse. His spirit shield was shattered, and his physical body was almost flattened. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and all his bones were crushed. The spirit giant's palms clenched tightly, and a strong pressure held Qi Ying in his palms, making him unable to move. Caught one. Bai Xiaowen controlled the other 11 spirit giants to continue chasing after the remaining members of the secret society. Clang! Clang! The blonde black-robed youth and Xia Feng clashed with each other twice, and neither of them had the upper hand. Both of them were strong in offense and weak in defense. No matter if it was the flower sword or the broken blade, as long as they hit the opponent's physical body, they would at least be severely injured. Xia Feng's saber skills were better than his opponent's. However, when it came to close combat saber skills and swordsmanship, expert level 5 was already the limit of one's skills. Any higher and it would be a step into the realm of loss. Master-level sword skills and Grandmaster-level sword skills were already at the peak of skill. Xia Feng's strength lay in his understanding of the precepts of space, but the blonde black-robed youth had a higher level of God-given ability. In the previous 2 attacks, both of them fought with all their might, and both of them faced the danger of being hit directly by the opponent's attack. Xia Feng's calculation was very precise. His broken blade would hit the opponent an instant before the attack. This way, the opponent's attack power would be greatly reduced, and there would be no reason for him to give up and dodge. The blonde black-robed youth, on the other hand, activated the magic mirror at the moment when the blade was about to hit him. He allowed the blade to pass through his body, but he was not injured at all. At this moment, he thought that he had already won because the tip of the Baroque sword was less than an inch away from Xia Feng's heart. However, Xia Feng relied on spatial ripples to move more than 10 meters away, and he also dodged this attack. The 2 of them fought for a very short time, but it was thrilling. If anyone was careless, blood would immediately splatter on the spot. Brother Xia, there's no need to fight with him. I'll deal with him. Bai Xiaowen controlled the 11 spirit power giants. Taking advantage of this short time, he captured another one. It was Lan Ning, one of the 7 members of the secret society. At this point, he had already captured 2 spellcasters from the secret society. You deal with the others first. Xia Feng rejected Bai Xiaowen's good intentions. It's rare to have a good opponent. Looking at how Xia Feng was staring at him as if he was looking at a peerless beauty, the blonde black-robed youth felt a chill run down his spine. Even with the magic mirror's ability, he did not dare to fight against a madman like Xia Feng. The number of times the magic mirror could be used was not unlimited. Most importantly, the overall situation was not favorable for them. The secret society was the party that was ambushed, and now they were trapped in the Sky Immortal formation. When the undead army entered the formation, the secret society's defeat was already destined. The blonde black-robed youth originally wanted to use his God-given ability to take the bait by Xiaowen throughout the Reaper's Bone and escape. Now, it was no longer realistic. 2 members of the secret society were captured. If this dragged on, the situation would only worsen. Under such circumstances, how could the blonde black-robed youth continue to fight with Xiaofeng? He immediately made a decision, and that was to escape. "Everyone, come to me." The blonde black-robed youth transmitted his voice to the others. At the same time, he sped up and tried his best to avoid Xiaofeng. The remaining 3 members of the secret society surrounded the blonde black-robed youth and approached the edge of the Sky Immortal formation. Bai Xiaowen was rather curious. Could it be that these people, other than the God-given ability of Magic Mirror, had other spatial abilities of higher priority? Grey Shadow had already used the Magic Mirror to verify the strength of the Sky Immortal formation. The Sky Immortal formation's inherent priority was 5. The true inner force that Bai Xiaowen used to make the Immortal Talisman had a priority of 8. Combined, it was a total of 13 priority. As a lord, the blonde black-robed youth's base spiritual energy priority was only 7. He had to use a spatial escape spell with a priority of at least 6 to escape the Sky Immortal formation's obstruction. Although Bai Xiaowen did not believe that these people could escape from the Immortal formation, he would not sit idly by and watch. He continued to control the spiritual giants to chase after them. At the same time, another 2 spiritual giants circled to the front of this group and slapped their giant palms toward them. Once the 20 palms of the 10 giants clapped together, the power was enough to severely injure a king. The blonde black-robed youth murmured, and the shadow of a huge vertical pupil suddenly appeared behind him. Seeing this vertical pupil, Bai Xiaowen's heart skipped a beat. This pupil was almost identical to the Great Lord's pupil that he had encountered in the Black Tide realm. "Open!" The 2 extra energy arms behind the blonde black-robed youth suddenly withered and disappeared without a trace. From the shadow of the vertical pupil, a black light suddenly shot out. The palms of the spiritual giants and the barrier of the Sky Immortal formation were all silently devoured by this black light, eroding a large hole in the barrier. Whoosh! The blonde black-robed youth and his 3 surviving companions all flew out of the hole. Xiaofeng launched 3-dimensional slashes in the air, but they were all ineffective. Among the 4, 3 of them, including the blonde black-robed youth, still had the remaining uses of the demonic mirror ability and dodged the dimensional slashes. Only the Grey Shadow was more unlucky. He had used up all the uses of the demonic mirror ability and could not dodge successfully. 2 of his thighs, or perhaps 3, were silently cut off. They got away. Xiaofeng frowned, unwilling to give up. If this kind of enemy was not annihilated when they had the upper hand, there would be endless trouble in the future. "After them." Bai Xiaowen calmly spat out a word and said to the demon fire crow on the silver throne, "It's time for you to act. Letting these people stay in the Dark Age realm is still a great threat to you. Caw. No matter what you say, I won't come out. You coward." Bai Xiaowen was speechless. However, there was no other way. Bai Xiaowen was not a god and could not do everything according to his wishes. Previously, he thought that he had a 70% chance of persuading Luosier in this situation. However, Luosier was in the remaining 30%. "Are we still going to chase?" Xiaofeng asked. "Yes, let's go together." Bai Xiaowen took a deep breath. He directly imprisoned the 2 captured people, Crimson Shadow and Blue Shadow, and then chased after them with Xiaofeng. Xiaofeng placed one hand on the silver throne. Spatial ripples gently rippled as he chased in the direction of the secret society's escape, the north. Xiaofeng's mobility was unparalleled. Even with Bai Xiaowen, he still managed to catch up to the 4 members of the secret society 3 times. The 4 members of the secret society did not dare to continue fighting. Even if only Bai Xiaowen and Xia Feng chased after them, behind them, there was an army of 10,000 undead desperately chasing after them. If they turned around to fight, it would cause a delay. When the undead army arrived, they would not be able to defeat them. The first time they caught up, the secret society used a precious group escape talisman. The second time they caught up, the secret society had no choice but to abandon the high paraplegic gray shadow. Only the three of them escaped pathetically. By the third time they caught up, Bai Xiaowen and Xia Feng had already chased for thousands of miles. They were at least 800 miles away from the undead army. The secret society turned around and engaged in battle. One of the reasons was that the undead army could not make it in time. Another reason was that they had an additional force, Purple Shadow, who had appeared during the battle on the island in the eastern continent. Purple Shadow was ranked 6th in the secret society. However, in terms of strength, he was second only to the boss. 4 against 2. Lu Wang and Xia Feng are too arrogant. Boss, this is a chance, the second brother of the secret society said loudly. Wrong, it's 4 against 20. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand. A large group of summon creatures appeared again. Among them, there were as many as 7 Lord-level summon creatures. There were also a large number of leaders and a small number of elites. Normal summon creatures were almost nowhere to be seen. Run! Without much hesitation, the 4 of them continued to run. Bai Xiaowen and Xia Feng chased them from afar. They chased them all the way to the snowy plains in the north before the 4 members of the secret society disappeared. They've left the Dark Age, Xia Feng said. Yes, it seems like this is the spatial node they first entered from. Bai Xiaowen sighed softly. Expelling these people from the Dark Age bit wall is not a bad result. If the 4 of them had the tracking item of the Dark Age bit wall, they could still make a comeback. This was also a difficult problem for territories to conquer the spiritual world. It was too easy for competitors to destroy them. There was a saying that one could be a thief for 1,000 days, but there was no such thing as guarding against a thief for 1,000 days. It was easy to conquer a territory, but difficult to defend it. Unless Bai Xiaowen could always be in charge, but that was impossible. We've caught 2 captives. This is a good thing, Xia Feng said. 2.5. Bai Xiaowen smiled. On the way, they also caught the high paraplegic gray shadow. Bai Xiaowen also imprisoned his spiritual power. They should be able to get some valuable information from these captives. What Bai Xiaowen was most interested in was the identity of these people's voters, as well as the gods behind them. What Bai Xiaowen cared about the most was the vertical pupil. From the appearance of the pupil, it was very similar to the Great Lord who invaded the Black Tide Bitwall. However, they could not arbitrarily assume that the god behind these people was the same god as the Great Lord. Chapter 1817. New City of Silver. In front of Bai Xiaowen, Crimson Shadow and Blue Shadow were tied up in chains and kneeling on the steps. As for Gray Shadow, who was the last to be captured, he was currently seriously injured and paralyzed. A group of demons had temporarily used demonic fire to stop his bleeding in order to save his life. Therefore, he was not in the hall. Take off their masks. Following Bai Xiaowen's order, Crimson Shadow and Blue Shadow's masks were taken off by the 2 demon leaders, revealing their faces. Bai Xiaowen and Xia Feng could see their true faces. These 2 people had obvious Caucasian characteristics and were not very old. Perhaps because they knew that the situation was bad, their faces were very pale. They did not know what kind of torture they were going to face. What are your names? Bai Xiaowen planned to start with these ordinary questions. First, he had to resolve the other party's wariness. As long as the 2 of them spoke, he could slowly guide them deeper. Things would be much easier. Job. The young man in the crimson robe hesitated for a moment before saying a simplified name. His name is Jobs, Bai Xiaowen smiled. This is just your name. What's your surname? What's your background in Star Alliance? Jobs said in a low voice, I was originally a member of Bao Zanling. It's just an unknown small territory. It can't be considered a background, Bao Zanling. Bai Xiaowen did not have much of an impression of a territory that was ranked 5th or even lower. However, there was no point in understanding it in depth because this young man named Job definitely had nothing to do with Bao Zanling. A shallow pond could not raise a big fish. This Job's strength was at the overlord level. How could he reside in a small territory that was even weaker than Tang Ling's territory? After you left Bao Zanling, which territory did you join? Bai Xiaowen asked. Job originally did not want to say, but seeing Bai Xiaowen's urgency, he had no choice but to say, it's Mice territory. Bai Xiaowen frowned. He had never heard of this territory either. Which large organization in Star Alliance does Mice territory belong to? The World Illumination Association. Bai Xiaowen was a little surprised. He had some dealings with the Divine Court and the Pan-Asian Organization, but he had never had any disputes with the World Illumination Society, the third major organization. Why would the World Illumination Society come to the Dark Age plane and fight over the Death God's bone with him? On the side, Xiafeng said, the World Illumination Association is a loose organization, much looser than the Divine Court and Pan-Asia. This Mice territory is only one of the mid-tier territories and cannot represent the will of the World Illumination Association's high-tier core territories. Bai Xiaowen instantly understood that the Mice clan was only using the World Illumination Society as a cover. In fact, Bai Xiaowen had also considered letting the White Phoenix territory join a large organization so that it could maintain a certain degree of independence and slowly develop. However, ever since the White Phoenix territory appeared in the Star Alliance, it had been targeted by the Great Tang territory. The subsequent series of wars had also caused the White Phoenix territory to no longer be able to keep a low profile. The two of you, and the other 5 teammates, are all members of Mist? Bai Xiaowen asked. Yes. Job said hesitantly. Bai Xiaowen could see the change in Job's aura. Although he hesitated, what he said was true. Last question. If you answer honestly, I can let you go. Bai Xiaowen stood up. What is the purpose of the god behind you to let you fight over the Death God's bone? A hint of fear appeared on Job's face. No. I don't know. It's impossible that you don't know, right? Bai Xiaowen could tell that he was lying. You can also change it to 2 small questions. What is your god's name? Did he instruct you what to do after you obtain the Death God's bone? I can't answer you, Job said with his head lowered. Bai Xiaowen looked at Job, who was wearing a blue robe beside Job. He had been kneeling on the ground without saying a word. Job felt Bai Xiaowen's gaze and looked up. He said calmly, don't waste your energy, Lu Wang. You won't get any valuable information from us. Is that so? Looks like you're quite loyal. Bai Xiaowen's gaze quickly turned cold. Take him out and behead him. The 2 demon leaders took Job out. Surprisingly, Job was still a tough nut to crack. When he was taken out, he did not even beg for mercy. However, a tough nut to crack was equivalent to a thorny hedgehog to Bai Xiaowen. He could not show the slightest generosity. That would be interpreted as weakness. After a few minutes, the 2 demon leaders returned and threw Job's head in front of Job. Job gritted his teeth and clenched his fists tightly. His body was also trembling. It was not out of hatred, but out of fear. I can't say it. My every move, every word, can't escape the control of the great God. I have signed a blood oath. Job said sadly. Lu Wang, it's no use even if you kill me. Before I reveal any information about that god, I will die directly, even if it's a single word. The demon leader responsible for killing Job suddenly walked toward Bai Xiaowen, knelt on one knee, and presented an item. This is a scroll? Bai Xiaowen took the scroll and glanced at it with the eye of evolution. Mysterious invitation, teleports the user to an unknown mysterious place. On the side of the scroll, there was a small line of words written in the demonic language. Bai Xiaowen had a certain grasp of the demonic language at this time and translated the text at a glance. Do you want my wealth? Come on. I have put everything there. Only the bravest, smartest, and strongest are qualified to inherit my legacy. Bai Xiaowen's heart suddenly froze. All the wealth. Only one person can inherit the legacy. Bai Xiaowen chewed on the 2 lines of information in the demonic language and suddenly said, "This is the ticket to the land of origin?" Xiafeng was stunned. What land of origin? Bai Xiaowen did not answer Xiafeng. His eyes were fixed on the red-robed young man, Job. The latter was half shocked and half surprised. Bai Xiaowen caught the change in his expression at that moment. I don't know what you're talking about. Job noticed Bai Xiaowen's stare and lowered his head. Haha, combined with the analysis of your micro-expressions, you should at least understand half of it, Bai Xiaowen said slowly. You at least understand the word ticket. As for the land of origin, there are many other names. Maybe the names are different in your world. But the fact that you got this ticket from Steve Jobs suggests that most likely everyone in your organization has a ticket. I don't. I haven't seen any tickets, Job denied. Of course, such a weak denial couldn't fool Bai Xiaowen. You don't have to deny it. I think this kind of ticket should be automatically dropped after killing. Even if one of my demon leaders killed Job, he still got the scroll, which is enough to prove this point. Maybe the ticket can't be put in the storage space, or maybe the ticket has a 100% drop rate. You really are a demon. Job said weakly. You guessed it all right. Bai Xiaowen reached out his hand and said, Give it to me. Job lowered his head and said, I can't give you my ticket. In addition to the ticket not being able to be put in the storage space and having a 100% drop rate, it also has a property, that is soul-bound. Only by killing you can I get the ticket. Bai Xiaowen reacted quickly. Job lowered his head and did not speak. Obviously, he agreed to this fact. Job, I need 2 tickets now, Bai Xiaowen's tone was gentle. However, including you, there are a total of 3 captives. That means, I can keep your life and not take your ticket. However, you have to give me a reason for doing so. Job raised his head. Tell me all the information you know and can tell me, Bai Xiaowen said. As for the secrets you can't tell, I can use the method of speculation to bypass your blood oath. The premise is that you have to cooperate. There was a hint of struggle in Job's expression. This meant that he was going to betray his god. However, Job was also very clear that he had no choice, but LV Wang had a choice. If Job did not cooperate, LV Wang would look for 7th brother Flopsy. Then, only death would await him. However, even if he decided to betray his god, Job was not sure if he could survive. He had lost his value, but he still had a ticket. Would LV Wang really keep his promise and spare him? Or would he kill him and take another ticket? After all, no one would complain about having too many tickets. If he took away a ticket now, it was equivalent to cutting off a competitor. I'm willing to cooperate, Job said softly. A wise choice. Bai Xiaowen smiled and got everyone in the hall except for Xiafeng to leave. Job did not know many secrets. The purpose of snatching the death god's bone and so on were things that could not be revealed. However, regarding the 7-man organization, the secret society, and their boss, Gast Bibi, he still spilled everything. You're saying? Back then, Gast Bibi was favored by a god and became the first chosen. Then, Gast looked for evolvers in the Star Alliance and developed new chosen. You were one of them? Job said softly, Yes, I was only an elite evolver at that time. I also don't know why Boss Gast found me and gave me the opportunity to receive a god's blessing. My strength directly rose to the level of an overlord, but from now on, I have to listen to the god's orders and follow Boss Gast. From elite to overlord, Bai Xiaowen thought for a while and said, there are 2 possibilities. First, Gast, or that god, has some ability to see evolvers with potential, so he found you and infused you. Second, you're a lucky person. From my immature experience, you're most likely the second situation. Bai Xiaowen had once used the power of the death god to infuse summon creatures. The principle should be similar to Job's growth. There were indeed summon creatures with great strength, but the proportion was very small. Many summon creatures couldn't withstand the infusion of divine power and exploded. However, they all had the death god's countenance as a foundation and could be revived after a period of time, so there wasn't any substantial loss. If the test subject was an evolver, naturally, he wouldn't have the ability to revive. However, the one infusing divine power was a real god, and the potential of an evolver was most likely stronger than a summoned creature. It wasn't impossible for Job to evolve from elite to overlord, but the success rate was low. Job was one of the luckier elements. Before him, he had probably exploded dozens or even hundreds of denominators. This was also easier to explain why the Mist Hill wasn't famous and why Job was born in a weak territory like Baozan Hill. Gast Bibi didn't want to attract too much attention. With such a huge increase in template, it would definitely become the focus of the entire Star Alliance. Therefore, when Gast chose test subjects, he always chose evolvers from weak and inconspicuous territories. He never looked for the rising stars of large territories to avoid unnecessary attention. Bai Xiaowen then used the method of speculation to confirm some other secrets about the gods. Job shut his mouth tightly, not daring to say a word. He could only use his eyes to confirm whether Bai Xiaowen's guess was correct or not. Blinking meant nodding, which was correct. Moving one's eyes left and right meant shaking one's head, which was wrong. It needed to be explained that evolvers had great control over organs like eyes and eyelids. There wouldn't be the problem of not blinking for 3 days and 3 nights, would it be sore? Is your god called Amitabha? Moving one's eyes left and right. Has the god revealed his image? Is he a strange 9-headed snake? Moving one's eyes left and right. Was it your god's order to seize the death god's bone through Gast? Blinking. Your tickets were given directly by the god. Blinking. The god wants you to go to the land of origin. Is it because he himself can't go? This question made Job pause. He didn't blink or move his eyes. Xiafeng had been listening attentively. Seeing Job's lack of reaction, he was a little surprised. Not good. Bai Xiaowen suddenly used a teleportation spell and hid behind Xiafeng. In the next second, Job's head exploded like a watermelon hit by a sledgehammer. Stinky blood splattered everywhere, leaving little bloodstains on the ground. The blood seemed to have a strong corrosive effect. On the silver floor of the hall, smoke curled up in spirals. The speed at which the blood splattered was extremely fast. It was a bit like a hidden weapon thrown by a hidden weapon expert. 3 of the bloodstains shot towards Xiafeng. Xiafeng could have dodged, but Bai Xiaowen hid behind him. He could only give up on using the power of space and used the seed of symbiosis to defend himself. 3 armor plates were exposed from Xiafeng's chest, legs, and face. The blood fell on the armor plates and bounced off without causing any damage. He's dead? Xiafeng quickly realized that he had said nonsense. Your reaction is quite fast. Bai Xiaowen smiled without any embarrassment. The god behind him is really ruthless, Xiafeng said. Don't sigh. Bai Xiaowen sighed. Brother Xia, you have the god of truth behind you. Chapter 1818. Seeing the tragic state of Job, it was impossible for Bai Xiaowen not to worry about Xiafeng. That was how an elector was. When he received a gift from a god, it was tantamount to giving his everything to the god to control. In front of ordinary evolvers, electors were superior and full of a sense of superiority because of their god-given abilities. However, in front of a god, they did not have the freedom of choice as ordinary evolvers. Although Xiafeng was a fool, he was not stupid. He just did not care too much about worldly affairs. When it came to the time to care, his intelligence level was higher than most people's. Xiafeng could also understand Bai Xiaowen's meaning. You're worried that I'll be like Job? Bai Xiaowen nodded. His lips moved, but he did not speak. For ordinary evolvers, it was unlikely that they would have a conflict with a god. It was not easy for a god to develop an elector with potential, especially a battle-type elector like Xiafeng, who had unlimited potential. He was like gold in the desert, and he would not easily play the game of head-busting. However, if Xiafeng walked together with Bai Xiaowen, the possibility of a conflict with a god would increase exponentially. Due to the fact that Xiafeng was an elector, this layer of meaning could not be explained clearly. It could only depend on Xiafeng to understand. Xiafeng quickly grasped the main point. Bai Xiaowen had this layer of concern, which meant that Bai Xiaowen had some kind of disrespectful idea towards a god. In the future, he might stand on the opposite side of a group of gods. You don't have to worry too much. Xiafeng smiled easily. Only when you receive the gift of energy from a god will your life and death be controlled by the god. Speaking of which, the god of truth behind me has not directly given me power. Bai Xiaowen thought for a moment. It seemed to make sense. The god of truth had only given guidance to Xiafeng twice. He had not directly given him power. Otherwise, Xiafeng's template would not only be at the lord level, but also at the king level. It would not be impossible for him to even reach the threshold of the god level. Speaking of which, the god of truth behind you is quite special. He didn't directly give you power, but correspondingly, he gave you a lot of freedom. By the way, did the god of truth look for you? What do you want from him? Mr. Xiafeng was obviously impressed. Yes, twice. As for the specifics, I promised him that I wouldn't reveal it. Bai Xiaowen thought for a while. The god of truth had instructed Xiafeng twice and asked him to do something for her twice. It looked like a business deal. Unlike other gods who had complete control over their voters, the god of truth was more like a collaborator. After Job died, a scroll floated above his corpse. That was Job's ticket to the land of origin. After he died, it naturally dropped. The god of truth didn't give you a ticket either. It seems that he doesn't have much interest in the land of origin. Big brother Xia, are you going? Mr. Xiafeng said, this is the first time I've heard of the origin land. Is it an important universe secret region? Bai Xiaowen didn't know how to describe it, so he nodded and said, you can understand it that way. If you go, I will definitely go, Xiafeng said. Then he took the scroll from Job's corpse and lowered his head to look at it carefully. What kind of existence left these words on the ticket? What does everything mean? It gives me an unusual feeling when I read it. Mr. Xiafeng only knew a little about the demon language, but Bai Xiaowen had just translated the demon language on the ticket. I'm not sure either. However, it said that the land of origin hides a huge treasure that can satisfy any wish. Bai Xiaowen said, but in the end, only one person can obtain the treasure. Everyone else will return empty-handed. Mr. Xiafeng said, in that case, the treasure is something that even gods are jealous of. That's right. Mr. Xiafeng glanced around the hall and saw Luo Xier's demon fire crow on the silver throne. He whispered to Bai Xiaowen, since it can satisfy any wish, can it revive Xiaohua? I don't know, but there should be a high chance, Bai Xiaowen said. Even if there's only a glimmer of hope, we have to fight for it. Mr. Xiafeng looked at Bai Xiaowen and continued to whisper, what about you? Do you have any other wishes that you have to do when you go to the land of origin? Bai Xiaowen shook his head. No. Mr. Xiafeng nodded. Then the two of us can reach an agreement. Caw. The demon fire crow flew over, and Luo Xier's dissatisfied voice sounded. Only the two of you are here, and you're whispering to each other? What secret can't be shared? After all, we are partners who have worked together before. What can be shared is not a secret. Bai Xiaowen glanced at Luo Xier's demon fire crow. Aren't you the same? You've always been secretive about the origins of you, Isman, and Nibras. At the mention of this, Luo Xier's demon fire crow immediately withered. Luo Xier immediately changed the topic. Ka, Christos, according to our previous agreement, I helped you get the remains of the demon god that Nibras has. Shouldn't you fulfill your promise and withdraw from the Dark Age plane? Bai Xiaowen said with a smile, of course I'll keep my promise. However, Mr. Thinker, I want you to think about a question first. Is it good news or bad news for you that I'm giving up this plane? Luo Sierra's demon fire crow cried, caw. Do I still need to think about it? Of course it's. Halfway through, Luo Sierra paused. Bai Xiaowen smiled. It seems that you've thought of it too. There are 7 people in the secret society. 3 of them died in my hands this time, but 4 of them survived. After they lick their wounds, they will definitely find a way to take revenge. Luo Sierra said, caw, even if they want to take revenge, you're the main target. Bai Xiaowen smiled happily. Yes, I'm the main target. Unfortunately, I'm stronger than them, so they don't dare to provoke me. But you're different. They'll soon realize that it was you, a demon-level demon, who helped me build the demon fire portal and caught them off guard. After I leave, you'll be the only one left in the Dark Age plane. Do you think they'll come after you? Luo Sierra's demon fire crow cried, caw. It's all your fault, Christos. You've pulled me into this vortex. Stop shouting, Luo Sierra, Bai Xiaowen said with a smile. I didn't force you to do this. In fact, you're just taking revenge for the death of your second clone. Seeing that Luo Sierra had nothing to say, Bai Xiaowen continued, the best way to protect you now is to let me keep the resonance portal in the Dark Age plane and share this world. If you're in danger, I can quickly rush back to save you through the resonance portal. Isn't that reasonable? Reasonable my ass. Luo Sierra's demon fire crow flapped its wings. Whether you want to stay or leave, it's up to you. Even if you stay, I don't have the ability to drive you away. Don't say that. I don't want to be known as a person who breaks promises. Luo Sierra, if you don't sincerely ask me to stay, I won't stay. Bai Xiaowen started to make things difficult for him. To deal with a prideful demon like Luo Sierra, he had to use an even more prideful attitude. Christos, you win. Stay. Luo Sierra's demon fire crow cried, caw. Piss me off. Your intentions aren't sincere enough, but I accept. Bai Xiaowen teased Luo Sierra for a while. Then, he and Luo Sierra agreed on their respective areas of influence and emergency contact methods. After walking out of the Silver Hall, Sigdelifa came up to him. Master, there's bad news. I don't know why, but the head of the grey-robed captive exploded. The dozen or so demons guarding him all died without a complete corpse. Sigdelifa lowered his head and said, it's my fault. It's not your fault. Bai Xiaowen asked about the time the grey-robed captive's head exploded and realized that it was exactly the same time as the red-robed captive, Job. It seemed that the god had exploded both captives at the same time. Bai Xiaowen felt that he had still underestimated the ruthlessness of the god behind the secret society. However, this also showed that the god couldn't monitor the thoughts and actions of the chosen at all times. If the god could monitor the thoughts and actions of the chosen at all times, then Job would have been killed before he could cooperate with Bai Xiaowen and make the first blink. However, this grey-robed captive who was paralyzed in a high position wouldn't have been accidentally injured. Now that such a situation had occurred, it should be that the 4 members of the secret society who had escaped had communicated with the god through some means. After the god knew that 3 of the chosen had fallen into the enemy's hands, he chose to kill the 2 who were still alive to prevent them from exposing his secret. No matter what, the death of the grey-robed captive allowed Bai Xiaowen to obtain the 3rd ticket to the land of origin. Master, Kelawan wants to see you. Sigdelifa saw that Bai Xiaowen's expression wasn't bad, so he reported carefully. Tell her that there's no need to explain. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and said, also, send a team of ghost soldiers to send her back to the United Human Kingdom. Yes. Sigdelifa sighed in his heart and turned around to leave. Bai Xiaowen didn't have any emotional attachment to the witch Kelawan's role this time. The grey-robed captive pretended to be Bai Xiaowen and tricked Kelawan into leaving. This incident itself was full of falsehood. As a master of prophecy, how could Kelawan be tricked so easily? The only explanation was that Kelawan didn't dare to expose the other party. Think about it, Bai Xiaowen led the main forces to the eastern continent, and the United Human Kingdom lacked top-level combat power. If the secret society failed to trick them and changed to robbing, Wutu Town would definitely be in chaos. Kelawan later helped the secret society to predict the location of the death god's bone, but judging from the time, she had delayed for a certain amount of time, so it wasn't purely for the sake of the secret society. Bai Xiaowen was too lazy to investigate further and let her be. This time, entering the Dark Age again, although there was an unexpected invasion by the secret society, from the results, Bai Xiaowen could be considered to have achieved his predetermined goal. Previously, he obtained the death god's left-hand bone from Rocher, which allowed Bai Xiaowen's death power to complete a leap. This time, he obtained the death god's lead bone from Nibras. The most important thing now was to digest the death god's lead bone. Bai Xiaowen and Xia Feng returned to the White Phoenix territory. This time, the exploration in the Dark Age dimension took almost a month. Bai Xiaowen was a little worried that the White Phoenix territory and the Great Xia territory, two new powerful territories that relied heavily on the strength of the lords, would encounter some challenges. However, after returning, there weren't any major changes in the Starlink. Bai Xiaowen roped in a group of neutral territories to form an economic alliance, and it was quite effective during this period. Every day, large amounts of spirit crystals flowed into the White Phoenix territory, the Great Xia territory, the Wuzhou territory, and other territories. The Great Yan territory also seemed to have kept their blood oath and didn't obstruct the two territories when Bai Xiaowen and Xia Feng left. However, under the calm surface, the situation in the Starlink was turbulent. According to Lord Candace's intelligence, in the past month, the proportion of powerful evolvers in the Starlink had gone missing had reached an all-time high. The so-called powerful evolvers here generally referred to Lord-level evolvers. At the very least, they were hero-level evolvers like the Great Xia territory's Guobaisheng, who had the combat strength of a lord. Moreover, they were generally above level 16 and were high-level evolvers. I understand. This must be the Great Yan territory's scheme. Guobaisheng said angrily in a meeting. The Great Yan territory has always been targeting the rising stars. Back then, they tried their best to kill Lord Xiafeng. Fortunately, with Lord Lu Wang's help, Lord Xiafeng was able to avert disaster. Now, the Great Yan territory's evil claws have extended to other high-level evolvers. But there are also rumors of powerful evolvers in the Great Yan territory going missing, Candace said. Guobaisheng said, maybe they failed to steal the chicken and were killed by the other party. They were ashamed to publicize it, so they reported their disappearance. The others agreed. What do you think, Lord Xiafeng? The queen bee looked at Xiafeng. Xiafeng was counting the newly bloomed plum blossoms outside the window. Let's ask Lord Lu Wang to speak, Candace said with a smile. Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly and said slowly, so many powerful evolvers in the Starlink have gone missing recently, covering the three major organizations. Such a big lineup, I'm afraid it's not just the Great Yan territory's doing. It's more like a warm-up before a big event. A warm-up? As soon as Bai Xiaowen spoke, Xiafeng's attention returned. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and said, the opening of the Land of Origin is a big event. Those voters with insider information, as well as the forces behind them, have started to act in advance. Their goal is to eliminate competitors as much as possible and increase their chances of victory in the Land of Origin. Xiafeng's brows relaxed. Then, there are also voters in the Great Yan territory? That's right. At this point, Bai Xiaowen no longer needed to hide it from Xiafeng. He considered his words and said, the Great Yan territory's lord, Xia Yan, has a son called Xia Jinshi. He should be a voter of a god who's good at cursing. Crack! A corner of the table was suddenly crushed into powder in Xiafeng's hand. Xiafeng looked down at the pile of wood shavings, then looked up again and saw the surprised gazes of the people around him. He smiled and said, it's nothing. I was thinking about something else and accidentally used too much strength. This is a special time. Everyone, be careful when you go out. Try to minimize the exploration of the spirit world and secret realms. Bai Xiaowen stood up and pressed his palm on Xiafeng's shoulder. He could clearly feel that his shoulder was trembling. "All right, let's adjourn." Chapter 18-19. White Phoenix Territories Palace. The candlelight in the small conference room flickered, flickering. The Hornet Queen, Candace, and the others had already left, and the others were busy with their own matters. Only Xiafeng and Bai Xiaowen were left in the conference room. I revealed a little bit of information to everyone so that they would be wary of Xia Jinshi. Although the Great Yan region has signed a blood oath with us, the Hornet Queen and Candace are not within the scope of the blood oath's protection, Bai Xiaowen explained. The Hornet Queen was considered a powerhouse with a master-level specialization and was not weak among the high-level lords. She could become one of the targets of the Great Yan region, which was why Bai Xiaowen revealed Xia Jinshi's background in front of everyone. Xiafeng's focus was not on this. He said slowly, "Is Xia Jinshi that person?" Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. "How did you confirm it?" Bai Xiaowen shook his head. "I'm sorry, I can't tell you how I confirmed it for the time being, but I can guarantee that person is Xia Jinshi, without a doubt." The reason why Bai Xiaowen could confirm this was because of his father, Bai Yuantang's spiritual sense. However, Bai Xiaowen could not reveal the existence of the Bai Yuan Hall or his contact with the Bai Yuan Hall yet. Not even Xiafeng could. Xiafeng had only asked subconsciously. He trusted Bai Xiaowen very much and did not delve into the process. He only slowly clenched his fists. Bai Xiaowen could see that Xiafeng's knuckles were a little white. Bai Xiaowen said softly, "As a chosen, Xia Jinshi will definitely participate in the exploration of the land of origin this time. We will have a chance to take revenge." Xiafeng nodded. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly paused. Bai Xiaowen suddenly had a strange feeling. There was clearly only two people in the small conference room, but there seemed to be a third person. However, Bai Xiaowen's spiritual sense swept over and focused inch by inch, but he did not find anything. It was as if the third person had merged into the air, and there was no trace of him. Bai Xiaowen immediately shouted, "Who is it?" The shock in his heart was indescribable. This was the White Phoenix territory. As the territory lord, Bai Xiaowen actually did not know that there was an additional person in the small hall. Furthermore, he could not find any traces of this person. This simply went against common sense. Seeing that no one answered, Bai Xiaowen stood up abruptly and took out the silver throne. At the same time, he opened his 5 fingers and was about to mobilize the power of the Third Order 5 Elements formation to forcefully seal off the small hall. "Wait a minute." Xiafeng stopped him and said slowly, "It's the will of God. The will of the God of Truth has descended." As Mr. Xiafeng spoke, a beam of starlight fell. In the cold light, one could see the illusion of interconnected stars. The stars were connected by starlight, forming the outline of a creature. Bai Xiaowen could not see the creature's full appearance clearly, but just from the angle of connection of the stars and their arranged positions, he could feel an incomparable sense of beauty. It was as if every star was just right. Adding one more star would be too much, subtracting one less would be too little. Even moving the position of a star slightly would destroy this sense of beauty. Moreover, from the spiritual sense level, Bai Xiaowen could feel a kind of obscure pressure. It was as if he was facing the vast starry sky, and he increasingly felt his own insignificance. "Hello." A beam of thought waves transmitted over. As mentioned before, compared to language, thought waves were a more direct method of communication. It could be considered a passive ability that every evolver had. Every evolver would be accompanied by a certain amount of thought waves when they expressed their thoughts. When an evolver explored the spirit realm, even if they encountered a race that did not speak the language, they could still let the other party understand their meaning when they spoke. This was the unintentional use of the ability of thought waves. Bai Xiaowen could further sense that this hello was not addressed to Xiafeng, but to Bai Xiaowen himself. "Hi, hello." Bai Xiaowen was a little surprised. He did not expect the God of Truth to be so polite, but he still had his guard up. Don't be nervous. The God of Truth's thought waves were very gentle. I am in a different dimension from you, and I can only communicate across dimensions with my powerful spiritual sense. Under normal circumstances, I am unable to use my own power to affect your world. Bai Xiaowen could not determine the authenticity of the God of Truth's words, so he asked carefully, "You said that you are unable to do it under normal circumstances, then under what circumstances can it be done?" The God of Truth replied, "Through some prayers, I can temporarily construct a channel that allows me to transmit a small amount of power to your world. Usually, it is used to promote some people with potential and make them my agents. For example, Brother Xiafeng is your agent?" The God of Truth replied, "No, he is still under observation." Bai Xiaowen and Xiafeng looked at each other. Even a genius with endless potential like Xiafeng could not be chosen by the God of Truth as an apostle. This God's standards were too high. In comparison, the God behind the 7 members of the secret society was simply a wholesale apostle. The God of Truth seemed to understand their thoughts. Don't misunderstand. I am different from the God of Shadows in finding apostles. I am not looking for cannon fodder, and I will not spoil the apostles' growth by excessive enthusiasm. That will only stifle their potential. The God behind the secret society is called the God of Shadows? Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and remembered this information. At the same time, Bai Xiaowen asked, "How many apostles do you have? Is it convenient for you to reveal them?" The God of Truth replied, "Currently, there is only one. It is not inconvenient. His name is Qiao Lakun, and he will contact you soon." Bai Xiaowen suddenly looked at Xiafeng. When Xiafeng first protected the White Phoenix territory, he had said that he owed someone a favor. That person was called Qiao Lakun. Xiafeng was also surprised. Uncle Qiao has long been an apostle of the God of Truth. Isn't he dead? He faked his death. He was the one who recommended you to me. The information revealed by the God of Truth was getting more and more shocking. Xiafeng's expression was somewhat complicated. Bai Xiaowen coughed and changed the topic. "Great God of Truth, what instructions do you have for us this time?" The God of Truth replied, "There is no need to add such a complicated prefix. Just call me by my God name. I am different from most gods and do not have so much extravagance." Bai Xiaowen was secretly surprised. Thinking about it this way, the God of Truth was probably an anomaly among the gods. Of course, such anomaly was easier for humans to come into contact with. "I am here this time for the opening of the land of origin. Originally, I did not intend to show myself, but you have been involved in the whirlpool of the apostles of the God of Shadows and the God of Curses. I can only show myself in advance to provide you with some guidance." Bai Xiaowen received another piece of information. The God behind Xia Jinshi was called the God of Curses. It seemed to be quite appropriate. Bai Xiaowen also secretly paid attention to another detail. That was, the God of Truth's name for the opening of the secret realm was the same as his father, Bai Yuan Tang. They were both Land of Origin. The name Land of Origin was not a public title. There were many names for that secret realm, such as Land of the Fallen Gods, Universe Labyrinth, and so on. The name Land of Origin was given by Bai Yuan Tang himself. Bai Xiaowen secretly guessed that the God of Truth most likely knew of Bai Yuantang's existence and might have had some interaction with him. However, Bai Xiaowen could not use Bai Yuantang's matter to verify it. He even controlled himself not to think about Bai Yuantang, in case the God of Truth was an enemy and not a friend. He also knew things like mind reading and could steal secrets from his mind. Xiafeng stood up and said, "What do you need us to do?" "You have received 3 tickets. Give me the extra one," the God of Truth said. Xiafeng did not speak. Instead, he looked at Bai Xiaowen with an inquiring gaze. Bai Xiaowen's heart skipped a beat. He knew Xiafeng too well. If Bai Xiaowen shook his head, he would definitely reject the God of Truth's request directly without beating around the bush. Of course, it would be our honor. Bai Xiaowen did not even ask about the conditions of the exchange and agreed directly. the God of Truth said, when Xiao Lakun comes to find you, just give him the tickets. Okay. Bai Xiaowen agreed without hesitation. He then asked, God of Truth, shouldn't these tickets be distributed by the gods, directly to the electors? Don't you have any? No, the God of Truth answered calmly. Bai Xiaowen thought to himself, could it be that this God of Truth is doing badly? In comparison, the 7 electors of the God of Shadow each had a ticket. It was a little too generous. Prepare well. In at most a month, the Blue Planet's evolvers will be able to enter the land of origin. As a reward for this transaction, I will give you one guidance, the God of Truth said. Bai Xiaowen's scalp tingled. The God of Truth's words were not the key point, but the details behind it were too shocking. However, Bai Xiaowen was more concerned about the guidance from the God of Truth. Forgive me for saying too much, but this guidance is simple guidance, regardless of whether it is vocational classics, combat skills, or combat specialization, the God of Truth said. As long as you ask, I can guide you and give you the corresponding enlightenment. This is the perfect version of the enlightenment light ball, right? Bai Xiaowen thought to himself. This ticket was really worth it. Brother Xia, what do you choose? Bai Xiaowen asked. Xia Feng said, of course, I still choose the sword technique. The God of Truth said, your sword technique is already close to that of a god. With my guidance, it is impossible for your sword technique to improve significantly. Even if there is a slight breakthrough, it will be enough. Xia Feng was open-minded. The God of Truth looked at Bai Xiaowen. What about you? Bai Xiaowen smiled bitterly. Compared to Xia Feng's single-mindedness, he had learned too many things. There were 2 manuals for different professions, countless combat skills, and various combat specializations. Among them, there was also the special specialization of spiritual energy mastery. Even his combat style was not fixed, so it was too difficult to choose one. After careful consideration, Bai Xiaowen said, I obtained an incomplete black book. The black book obtained after Death's countenance absorbed the Death God's remains was Bai Xiaowen's biggest secret, aside from Bai Yuantang in the Eye of Evolution. Bai Xiaowen felt that with the God of Truth's insight, he would definitely know that he had absorbed the Death God's bone. Even the many summon creatures that had been upgraded through the power of the Death God could not escape the God of Truth's insight. Therefore, the black book was probably not a secret to the God of Truth, and there was no need to keep it a secret. After describing the contents of the first page of the black book to the God of Truth, Bai Xiaowen asked, how did the black book come about? How can I make the most of this book? The thoughts of the God of Truth fluctuated without any ripples. You are quite lucky. A mysterious existence affected your fate line, allowing you to obtain the Death God's divine spark fragment from the very beginning. However, at that time, the fragment was only an empty shell. Later, you destroyed the remnant soul of the 7th Death God, and the Death God's divine spark fragment became the Chief God's divine spark, which was why it could be used. So the Black Soul Stone is the Death God's divine spark fragment. Who is the mysterious existence that affected my fate line? Could it be Pops? Did Pops already pay attention to me at that time? It doesn't seem that early. Bai Xiaowen thought silently. Because the amount of information was too shocking, Bai Xiaowen had no time to stop himself from thinking about Bai Yuantang. The God of Truth continued, the Death God's divine spark fragment exists widely in his remnant body. Therefore, every remnant that you absorb with the Chief God's divine spark is the process of perfecting this divine spark. As for the Black Book, it is actually the manifestation of the divine spark in your mind. Being able to open the first page means that the Death God's divine spark you possess is close to being complete. Complete divine spark. What does that mean? The God of Truth said, when all the Death God's remains are gathered, the divine spark will be complete. Congratulations, at that time, you will be able to become the 8th God of Death. After pausing for a moment, the God of Truth said, becoming a god is also the goal I set for Xiao Lakun. Xia Feng, you must have the potential to become a god before I allow you to become my chosen. Bai Xiaowen said in surprise, isn't this requirement too high? he felt that the God of Truth probably had an extremely high status among the gods. He was actually recruiting a new god to be his underling. However, there was another problem. If the God of Truth really had such a high status among the gods, how could he not have a ticket? The number of chosen was also a little too little. Bai Xiaowen felt that this was incomprehensible. The God of Truth seemed to have seen through Bai Xiaowen and said, "You don't have to guess the relationship between the gods. Compared to Xiafeng, you already have a path to becoming a god." The death god is also considered a relatively powerful clergy among the gods. Bai Xiaowen said with a smile, "Thank you for your compliment." The God of Truth said, "When the portal to the land of origin opens to the blue planet, a notification will appear automatically on your ticket. In addition, when you need my guidance, just ask Xiafeng to silently recite my name. Please wait a moment, let me ask one last question." Bai Xiaowen took a deep breath and said slowly, "The demon language written on the ticket is, only the smartest, bravest, and strongest can obtain the treasure." This sentence is ambiguous. How many people will be able to obtain the treasure? Chapter 1820. Bai Xiaowen didn't know if it was an illusion, but after asking this question, he felt a slight tremor in the starlight that formed the God of Truth. "Do you understand that the smartest, the bravest, and the strongest person will get the treasure?" the God of Truth asked. Bai Xiaowen nodded. "This should be an explanation." "You are wrong. In the end, only one person will get the treasure," the God of Truth said firmly. This was basically the same information that Bai Yuantang had told Bai Xiaowen. In this exploration of the land of origin, only one person would return with a full load. Everyone else would become losers. Xiafeng glanced at Bai Xiaowen. The meaning in his eyes was very simple. The two of them had the same goal. In fact, there was no conflict. Bai Xiaowen looked back at Xiafeng. He understood what Xiafeng meant, but Xiafeng's thinking was too simple. Considering that the God of Truth couldn't pose a real threat to the two of them, Bai Xiaowen made up his mind and asked an important question. "Since only one person can get the treasure, as a god, why are you still so interested in the land of origin?" The God of Truth's thoughts were very calm. "All gods are interested in the land of origin. Even if you are destined to get nothing and leave empty-handed?" Bai Xiaowen asked. "This depends on how you define empty-handed. In the eyes of the gods, the treasure itself isn't the key. The person who gets the treasure is the key." Bai Xiaowen frowned. He felt that he seemed to have grasped some clues, but he couldn't figure out the key points. Even with his active thinking, he couldn't figure out the key points. This meant that he didn't have enough information. However, the God of Truth didn't give Bai Xiaowen another chance to ask questions. The body formed by the starlight gradually faded and disappeared. "Big brother Xia, from now on, we have to train hard for a month," Bai Xiaowen said, "but before that, I have a question for you. You want to ask about Xiao Lakun, right?" Xiafeng reacted quickly. Bai Xiaowen nodded and asked seriously, "What does this person have to do with me?" "I originally thought that he might be Qiao Rui's elder, but Qiao Rui said that he had never heard of such an elder." Xiafeng was already very familiar with the upper echelons of the White Phoenix territory. Of course, he knew the background of Qiao Rui, who had been entrusted with an important task by Bai Xiaowen to become the new Lord of Bone Melting Ridge. From the inheritance of the bone melting had been passed down to Qiao Rui, Qiao Rui was very important. Of course, Qiao Rui's I'm TS, so ITO so to favor. He should be very old, so I call him Uncle Qiao. As for whether or not he's related to Qiao Rui, I'm inclined to say that they aren't. Otherwise, the Qiao family wouldn't be unknown in the Star Alliance. Bai Xiaowen nodded slowly, but his expression became even more serious. He wouldn't forget that Xiao Lakun had taken the initiative to communicate with Xiafeng and asked Xiafeng to protect the White Phoenix territory once. If it had something to do with Qiao Rui, it would be easy to explain. But if it had nothing to do with Qiao Rui, Xiao Lakun's actions were too difficult to understand. If they were complete strangers, why would he waste a favor and ask Xiaofeng to help? Xiaofeng's favor was definitely not that worthless. Bai Xiaowen didn't think about this for the time being. He turned to a quiet room with Xiaofeng and began a month-long sprint of cultivation. Bai Xiaowen's main task was to eliminate Nibra's 2 Grim Reaper's leg bones. Assimilate and absorb. After this round of digestion, the incomplete black book in Bai Xiaowen's mind became more complete, and the Grim Reaper's power soared to the upper limit of 1,000 points. Bai Xiaowen concluded. Currently, the Grim Reaper's appearance had devoured the Grim Reaper's remains, which included the skull, the bones of both hands, and the bones of both legs. The head and the 4 limbs were complete, and only the most crucial torso bones were missing to form a complete set of Grim Reaper's remains. According to the God of Truth, the Black Book was the manifestation of the Grim Reaper's divinity. When the Grim Reaper's remains were gathered, it meant that the Black Book was successfully repaired, and Bai Xiaowen could use it to become the Grim Reaper. The value of this information couldn't be exaggerated. After all, it involved the path to godhood. However, the God of Truth had so casually pointed out the path to godhood to Bai Xiaowen. This process was a little surprising. Bai Xiaowen would definitely be willing to pay a considerable price for this information to make a deal. As for where the final set of Grim Reaper's remains were, Bai Xiaowen actually had a vague guess. It wasn't difficult to verify this guess, but this matter couldn't be rushed. Bai Xiaowen then communicated with the God of Truth and asked for guidance on how to cultivate the Black Book. The God of Truth replied, "The dark space formed by the first page of the Black Book is actually the internal space of the Grim Reaper's divinity. The lines of the green polyhedron are all made up of the most basic origin symbols. In the process of learning these origin symbols, you will slowly grasp some knowledge about the origin of the world. Time, space, light, fire, wind, and everything else are all made up of origin symbols." Bai Xiaowen drew inferences from one example and quickly had a new understanding. Then the skills we usually use are essentially constructed by the origin symbols according to a certain program? Yes. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes, but his heart was in turmoil. According to God, everything in the boundless world was formed by the arrangement and combination of origin symbols. The boundless world could be understood as a set of superlarge programs, and everything was just a subroutine under this set of superlarge programs. When an evolver used a skill, it was also a subroutine that operated. The priority of the skill was the priority of the program's operation. In this case, it was unavoidable to touch on a question. What kind of existence was the programmer who edited these programs? Was it God? Bai Xiaowen didn't think so. If God was a programmer, then how could humans, who were subroutines, be promoted to a new God, as the God of Truth said? It was impossible for a program to become a programmer. This was the difference in dimensions. Bai Xiaowen recalled what Bai Yuantang had once said to him, a philosophical proposition about what was true and what was false. If such a programmer really existed, then the boundless world was virtual to him. He could edit and modify subroutines at will, create and delete anything. But the boundless world created by this programmer was real to Bai Xiaowen, who was in it. Then, as a member of the boundless world, was the human's will, emotions, and comprehension ability edited? Everyone was special. Other than the genetic coding, what was more important was the uniqueness of the spiritual soul, which was the uniqueness of the spiritual core. If there was such a programmer, the other party would be able to create thousands of copies of Bai Xiaowen's personal panel, including but not limited to his physical attributes, professional records, and various skills. However, Bai Xiaowen still believed that he was unique. He did not think that a programmer would be able to create a mental core that belonged solely to Bai Xiaowen. No matter how exquisite the origin symbols were, no matter how complicated the program was, it couldn't edit all the changes of human emotions. Because human emotions were complicated, unpredictable, and impossible to summarize. When faced with the same choice in the same situation, repeating it twice might result in completely different choices. After the God of Truth fulfilled his promise and taught Bai Xiaowen some basic knowledge to interpret the origin symbols, he disappeared. Of course, he didn't know what kind of waves were surging in Bai Xiaowen's heart. Bai Xiaowen didn't want to think too deeply. He was more willing to study the origin symbols in the Black Book in depth and master more and more profound knowledge about the origin of the world. It was more appropriate to leave those philosophical questions to thinkers or lunatics. After obtaining the basic knowledge about the origin symbols, Bai Xiaowen's death power had reached the upper limit of 1,000 points. Bai Xiaowen's progress in the Black Book was more than 10 times faster than before. The first green light polyhedron was successfully copied, which gave Bai Xiaowen a considerable increase in comprehension ability. Moreover, the increase in comprehension ability seemed to be permanent, with no time limit. This increase in comprehension ability was actually very easy to understand, because the green light polyhedron contained the knowledge of the origin symbols of the world, which was equivalent to, a part of, a programming language book. Professional books could only be considered as a subroutine based on these origin symbols. Copying the origin symbols of the green light polyhedron was equivalent to reading a programming language book and then learning the specific subroutine. Of course, it was very beneficial. This increase in comprehension ability wasn't just for professional books. Bai Xiaowen could clearly feel that the completion of the first stage of the Black Book had brought about an increase in comprehension ability and mastery of skills and specialization. It didn't take long for Bai Xiaowen to break through the sixth stage of the Taishu Sutra. At this point, both the Art of War and the Taishu Sutra had reached level 16. In terms of personal attributes, all three of his physical fitness had broken through the 200 mark, and his mental strength had increased to 245 points. The upper limit of his spiritual energy had increased again, to 4,650 points. Specialization, spiritual mastery had increased to expert level 5. There was also a new understanding of the 6 major branches of immortal arts. Bai Xiaowen didn't give up on cultivating his specializations and skills. Using the increase in comprehension ability provided by the Black Book, he quickly pushed his meditation specialization to expert level 5. Even his swordsmanship specialization was pushed to expert level 1. With 3 expert level specializations, the second part of the Art of War, level 17 and beyond, was finally unlocked. However, Bai Xiaowen didn't have time to cultivate for the time being. Under Xiaofeng's guidance and sparring, he worked hard to increase his swordsmanship, meditation, and spiritual mastery. Bai Xiaowen's battle plan for this stage was basically set. When sparring with Xiafeng, Bai Xiaowen didn't use the Silver Throne, and at the same time, Xiafeng didn't use his master-level saber technique, the Law of Space. Bai Xiaowen used his swordsmanship specialization to contend with Xiafeng and waited for opportunities to attack with spells. He walked the path of a demon swordsman. The demon swordsman's path was better in terms of flexibility and flexibility. It was an important supplement to teleportation Daoist technique and also an important supplement for Bai Xiaowen to make up for his weakness in close combat. After all, teleportation Daoist technique was a space-type spell. Moreover, it didn't have a high priority and could be easily countered. According to Xiafeng, many high-level combat-type Lord-level evolvers had master-level combat-type specializations. Their full-force attacks would have a slight space-time vibration power. If it was an ordinary punch or kick, the space-time vibration power wouldn't have a high priority. Normally, it would only be 7 points and wouldn't restrict the use of teleportation Daoist technique. However, if it was a powerful physical-type battle technique, the overall priority would be 9 or 10 points, which might exceed the effective range of teleportation Daoist technique. At this time, Bai Xiaowen couldn't use teleportation Daoist technique, and he didn't have a reliable defensive skill. He could only rely on his true inner force to protect his body. In terms of close combat, even if he didn't have the strength to fight, at least he couldn't be a weakness. Of course, teleportation Daoist technique was always successful against most Spirit World bosses because Spirit World bosses didn't have master-level specializations. After confirming the Demon Swordsman's path, the Silver Throne could still be used as a trump card. When practicing with Xiafeng, Bai Xiaowen finally understood what it meant to be a combat genius. Expert-level specializations were the pinnacle of combat skills. Above that were Master level and Grandmaster level, which were already at the level of Dao. Xiaofeng suppressed his saber skills to Master level. Compared to Bai Xiaowen, only Heart Mirror could be used. There wasn't much of a difference in saber skills. However, relying on Heart Mirror, Xiaofeng repeatedly defeated Bai Xiaowen. Even if Bai Xiaowen used various spells to support him, he could only last a little longer. Xiaofeng was puzzled. When you were fighting against the secret society in the Dark Age dimension, it didn't seem to be at this level. You had a skill similar to Heart Mirror, right? That was an external force. Bai Xiaowen was too embarrassed to say that it was due to the insight of the Eye of Evolution and the calculation and prediction of the super brain. Can you maintain this external force for a long time? Xiaofeng asked. I haven't tried. Give it a try. If you can maintain it for a long time without too much of a burden, this external force can also be considered a part of your strength. Xiaofeng thought about it and decided to be straightforward. It's impossible for you to train your specialization to master level in a short time. Why don't you think of a way to replace it? Okay, using the Eye of Evolution, he could see the direction of the contraction of Xiaofeng's muscles and the acceleration of his blood circulation. He could predict where Xiaofeng's attack would land. Bai Xiaowen could finally contend with Xiaofeng. The two of them practiced for a long time, and Bai Xiaowen could still hold on without being defeated. That's enough. Xiaofeng praised him. With your current strength, even if you were to be attacked by a master-level expert like Xia Jincheng, you shouldn't be at a disadvantage. That was enough. Bai Xiaowen didn't expect to be able to completely defeat an expert like Xia Jincheng in close combat, as long as he didn't drag him down. Next, the two of them switched training methods. Bai Xiaowen took out the Silver Throne and switched to the long-range spell mode, attacking Xiaofeng with all his might. At the same time, he used all kinds of auxiliary methods to lock onto Xiaofeng's figure, helping Xiaofeng practice how to escape the lock-on of a long-range spellcaster with only his body movements without using spatial ripples frequently. This kind of practice was also meaningful. It could reduce the mental exhaustion of Xiaofeng and increase his endurance in combat. The two of them practiced quite effectively, to the point where they forgot to eat and sleep. It wasn't until a few days later that Xiao Lakun came to the White Phoenix territory. Chapter 1821. Xiao Lakun was a burly middle-aged man. He had a bronze face and a simple smile. There was nothing special about his aura. He looked like an old farmer. However, with Bai Xiaowen's keen senses, he was able to sense an unusual aura from Xiao Lakun's eyes. That pair of eyes seemed to be hiding many secrets. Uncle Xiao. Xiaofeng was very respectful to Xiao Lakun. Little Feng, you've grown very quickly, Xiao Lakun said with a smile. Then, he glanced at Bai Xiaowen. You are, Lu Wan. Previously, I'm indebted to Senior Qiao for passing a message to Big Brother Xia to protect the White Phoenix territory, Bai Xiaowen said with cupped hands. Ha ha ha, it's nothing, Xiao Lakun said. If it's convenient for Senior Qiao, can you tell me why you want Big Brother Xia to take care of the White Phoenix territory? Bai Xiaowen went straight to the point. Xiao Lakun smiled. There's a girl called Xiao Rui in your territory, right? She's my great-grandniece. Bai Xiaowen's jaw almost dropped. He immediately sent a private message in the Overlord group and asked Xiao Rui to fly to the White Phoenix territory through the territory's teleportation array to meet him. During this process, Xiao Lakun also briefly explained his relationship with Xiao Rui, including the Qiao family on Earth. It turned out that Xiao Lakun was a first-generation evolver who had experienced a great change in the year of spirit origin. He also had an elder brother called Xiao Tai. Bai Xiaowen was shocked again. Xiao Tai was a legendary person in Huaxia. It was not an exaggeration to call him a national hero. His portrait was one of the 7 great meritorious officials who had been printed on the first edition of the banknotes. Xiao Tai had passed away many years ago. Xiao Lakun was his younger brother. This meant that Xiao Lakun's age was already That's right. I'm 117 years old this year, Xiao Lakun said with a smile. I really couldn't tell. Bai Xiaowen sighed as he looked at Xiao Lakun, who looked like a middle-aged man without a single strand of white hair. Brother Xia, don't call him Uncle Qiao anymore. Otherwise, you'll be taking advantage of Sister Qiao. Bai Xiaowen tried to ease the tension. However, Xiao Lakun smiled and said, there's no need. My mentality is still very young. Let's talk about our own. Why haven't I heard Sister Qiao mention your name before? Bai Xiaowen asked. Well, back then, my elder brother, Qiao Rui's great-grandfather, Qiao Tai, and I had some misunderstandings. When we were roaming the spiritual realm, we split up. Xiao Lakun had no intention of explaining in detail. He just said, I once encountered a crisis in the spiritual realm and almost died. Later, I was fortunate enough to meet the God of Truth. The Divine Lord wanted me to break away from my relationship with the Qiao family, so I changed my name and pretended that I had died in that crisis. Elder brother Qiao Tai probably also thought that I was dead, so the Qiao family's descendants didn't know about me. Xiao Lakun continued, when I was in the Star Alliance, I was actually paying attention to the Qiao family's movements. The Qiao family hasn't had an evolver for a long time. I'm still very happy that a descendant suddenly appeared. Seeing that you're in trouble and that it's not convenient for me to help, I can only ask Xiaofeng for help. I see. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, thank you, Senior Qiao. Although he said that, Bai Xiaowen still had a trace of doubt in his heart. Because of Qiao Rui, Xiao Lakun had asked Xiaofeng to protect the White Phoenix territory. In the end, it was still a bit far-fetched. However, Xiao Lakun clearly didn't have any ill intentions. Bai Xiaowen decided not to delve into it for the time being and turned to chat with Xiao Lakun. Xiao Lakun, who had lived for 117 years, could be said to be a living history of the spirit ability era. He started from the invasion of Earth's spirit droplets and the mutation of living creatures, all the way to how humans had relied on exploration to embark on the path of the awakened, and then fought back against the mutated creatures and the invading creatures from the spirit realm. Finally, the process of establishing one base city after another was definitely a magnificent epic. Qiao Rui had also arrived later. After meeting with Xiao Lakun, they were still somewhat unfamiliar with each other. However, Xiao Lakun was extremely emotional, and his eyes were somewhat moist. Bai Xiaowen's heart skipped a beat. Senior Qiao, don't you have any descendants in the Star Alliance or on Earth? Xiao Lakun shook his head and said, back then, I was even more obsessed with cultivation than Xiaofeng and delayed my youth. Later on, I had a few partners, but none of them had any descendants. Now that I'm more than 100 years old, my feelings toward relationships have become more and more indifferent. I'm not prepared to have any more children. After pausing for a moment, Xiao Lakun said, actually, it's very difficult for you and Xiaofeng to have any descendants. The stronger the humans, the less likely it is to have children. This should be common knowledge, right? Bai Xiaowen nodded. For example, Lord Taishan, Li Beihai, had 3 wives, but only had 1 daughter. After all, he was just an elite evolver. Although awakened ones were more powerful than ordinary people, they also had to pay a lot. A low fertility rate was just one of the reasons. Of course, the heavens were fair. The stronger the awakened/evolver, the less likely it was to have descendants. However, once they did have descendants, the descendants' potential would definitely be very outstanding. Xiao Lakun patted Xiao Rui's shoulder and handed over a book. This is the first time we've met. Great uncle doesn't have anything good to give you. I don't have much use for this book, so I'll give it to you. Bai Xiaowen glanced at it. The title of the book was Black Magic Research Journal, and the author's name was Gagani. He didn't know who he was. However, this book could give evolvers a priority of 8 points. It was a proper king-level book. Xiao Rui was obviously shocked by this cheap great-uncle's offer. However, she still refused. Great uncle, I can't learn a second profession book. Who said you can't? Xiao Lakun took out 2 yellow crystals and handed them to Xiao Rui. Just use them like spirit crystals. After you use them, you should be able to start cultivating a second profession book. Of course, it's up to you whether you want to cultivate it or not. Bai Xiaowen glanced at them again. The 2 yellow crystals were called God's Origin Crystals, and their uses were unknown. Just looking at the name, it was already amazing. These 2 God's Origin Crystals were probably equivalent to the Overlord's Proof of Awaken One. However, if it could be traded to others, it would definitely be rarer than the Overlord's Proof. Bai Xiaowen could only say that Xiao Rui was indeed a master who had lived for more than 100 years and had experienced the great changes of the world. He also had the backing of the God of Truth. He had a lot of good things. Just from these 2 God's Origin Crystals, he could see part of Xiao Lakun's strength. He definitely surpassed Xia Feng. Bai Xiaowen was now almost convinced by the God of Truth statement that his chosen one had to have the qualifications to become a god to be selected. He wondered if Xiao Lakun was also walking on the path to becoming a god. In any case, Xiao Rui had received a generous gift. Bai Xiaowen would definitely be happy for her. It wasn't strange that Xiao Lakun didn't give Bai Xiaowen a greeting gift. Xiao Lakun placed Bai Xiaowen and Xia Feng on equal footing. Both of them were partners who would explore the land of origin with him. Moreover, even if he gave Xia Feng and Bai Xiaowen a king-level profession classic and God's Origin Crystal each, the 2 of them wouldn't need it. Xia Feng and Bai Xiaowen both had their own paths. These foreign objects that had nothing to do with their paths were only of trading value to them. They couldn't use them to improve their strength. After Xiao Rui thanked him, Xiao Lakun said, "Xiao Rui, you go and cultivate first. Xiao Feng, Xiao Bai, and I have some confidential matters to discuss." Xiao Rui left obediently. Bai Xiaowen and Xia Feng both looked at Xiao Lakun. They knew that he was going to get down to business. "I don't know much about the land of origin. The god just gave me some general knowledge." Xiao Lakun said slowly, "The first thing is that you have to deal with the territory's affairs in advance. Will this trip to the land of origin take a long time?" Bai Xiaowen asked. "The land of origin itself might not take too long, but the journey to and fro will take a lot of time," Xiao Lakun said. You should all know that long-distance spatial travel requires the use of a spatial passage. This itself will take a certain amount of time. Bai Xiaowen nodded to show that he understood. This was the truth. For example, from the White Phoenix territory to the dinosaur planet, it would take about half an hour to travel through the spatial passage. It wouldn't be an immediate arrival. In other words, spatial travel greatly reduced the time spent on the journey, but it didn't reduce it to 0. "How long will it take?" Xia Feng asked. Xiao Lakun said, "The Godmaster said that it will take 3 years, and it's a one-way trip." "So far?" Bai Xiaowen said in surprise. The distance between the White Phoenix territory and the dinosaur planet was unknown, but through the spatial passage, it would only take half an hour to travel this distance. From here to the land of origin, it would take 3 years. How many dinosaur planets would it take? Xiao Lakun smiled. For humans, this kind of journey is indeed long. But for the entire universe, it's already very close. The land of origin was definitely not in the solar system, or even the Milky Way. Bai Xiaowen took a deep breath. A one-way trip of 3 years, and a return trip of 6 years. In addition to the time spent exploring the land of origin itself, we might not even be able to return in 7 or 8 years. I wonder what changes will happen to the Star Alliance. He was a little worried. The blood oath signed with the Great Yen territory only lasted for 1 year, and the White Phoenix territory and the Great Xia territory would usher in a vacuum of power for at least 6 years. This was the case for new territories. They were only supported by him and Xia Feng, 2 prominent figures. If both of them left, the territory's combat power would instantly drop. Xia Feng frowned. What should we do about the territory? Xiao Lakun smiled. There are 2 paths for you to choose from. First, I will take the lead. The Blue Planet Overlords will sign a 10-year non-aggression agreement. Those who violate it will be punished by the contract. Xiao LeCun took out a huge stone slab from his storage device. This stone slab was similar to the cauldron of blood oath. They were both props for signing blood oaths, but its grade was higher. It could accommodate more contractors, and the punishment for violating it was also higher. Xia Feng looked at Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen frowned and asked, "In this way, will there be no conflicts between us Blue Planet evolvers and the land of origin?" Xia Feng understood what Bai Xiaowen meant. The two of them were still thinking about finding Xia Jinshi of the Great Yen territory to settle the score in the land of origin. Xiao LeCun nodded. "I don't want to choose this." Xia Feng did not hesitate. "What's the second option?" Xiao LeCun put away the stone slab and said, "The second option is slightly more complicated. My territory, the Sea Cliff Secret Realm, is currently located in a spirit realm. You can also integrate your territory into that realm, and the three territories can coexist. The strength of the Sea Cliff Secret Realm is still not bad. Even if some powerful territories of the Star Alliance invade, there is no need to fear." "Which spirit realm?" Bai Xiaowen asked. He thought to himself, "No wonder I haven't heard of Xiao LeCun and the Sea Cliff territory in the Star Alliance. It turns out that they were hidden so deeply." "Shaoding Plain." Xiao LeCun smiled at Bai Xiaowen. "Shaoding." Bai Xiaowen's thoughts jumped, and he suddenly said, "I understand. Sea Cliff Gazing. The previous head of Shanqing School and the Great Elder are both with you?" Xiao LeCun nodded and smiled. "That's right. I also cured the head of Shanqing School of his madness. He was the one who didn't want to leave. As for the Great Elder, he was also determined to persuade him to go back. Then the rumors of the secret sect, yes, there is no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. My territory occasionally finds some good seedlings among the natives of Shaoding Plain, so there are rumors of the secret sect." Xiao LeCun said meaningfully, "Little Luang, you've played a lot of chess in Shaoding Plain." Bai Xiaowen was a little embarrassed. He shook his head and said, "I've made a fool of myself in front of Senior Qiao. If Senior Qiao doesn't mind, I'll immediately ask Vladimir to withdraw with his team." "No need. Anyway, the changes in Shaoding Plain have nothing to do with my Sea Cliff Secret Realm," Xiao LeCun said. "Well, if Shaoding Plain is unified, won't your territory be affected?" Xiao LeCun shook his head. Although the Sea Cliff Secret Realm is related to Shaoding Plain, it is independent of the unification and reconstruction. Bai Xiaowen understood. Xiao LeCun's Sea Cliff Secret Realm was like Guangchengzi's cave in the Three Kingdoms Plain world. It was not affected by the reconstruction of reincarnation. Bai Xiaowen was a little puzzled before. The rumors of the Sea Cliff Secret Realm, these big secrets of Shaoding Plain, seem to have nothing to do with the main battle of Shaoding Plain and the main battle between the righteous and the devil. Logically speaking, if he solved the main battle between the righteous and the devil, the secret sect should have made some movements. Otherwise, why would the secret sect be formed by the rules of the spiritual realm? Now that he knew that the so-called secret sect was only Xiao LeCun's territory, Bai Xiaowen was not surprised. Bai Xiaowen was also very relieved. The strength of the Sea Cliff Secret Realm was definitely enough to protect the White Phoenix territory and the Great Xia territory. Thinking about it, even the previous headmaster of the Shanqing School, who was a king-level master, refused to leave. The Sea Cliff Secret Realm must be full of masters, and it was very tempting to cultivators. He and Xia Feng looked at each other. Both of them chose the second path. The matter of hiding the territory in Shaoding Plain was left to Xiao LeCun to handle. As the lords, Bai Xiaowen and Xia Feng only needed to agree. Of course, in addition to the two territories, vassal territories such as the Bone Melting territory and the White Stone territory were also moved in at the same time. Bai Xiaowen specially asked Candace and the Queen Bee. Sure enough, as Bai Xiaowen guessed, Candace and the Queen Bee also got tickets to the land of origin. As the electors of two gods, they participated in the battle for the land of origin. At present, the queen bee was also worried about the safety of the territory in the next few years. After Bai Xiaowen said that, the queen bee readily agreed and also asked Xiao Lekun to hide the territory in Xiaoding Plain. Chapter 1822. However, Candace didn't agree. Her Rivendell territory was a member of the God's Court. Although the God's Court wasn't harmonious, it was much better than the Pan-Asian Alliance. Moreover, Candace had made a lot of friends over the years, and the overall strength of her territory was also very strong. It wouldn't be greatly weakened by Candace's departure, and it had the ability to protect itself. Bai Xiaowen didn't mention this matter again. He felt that Candace's attitude towards him seemed to have changed subtly. Perhaps it was because there was an obvious competitive relationship between the two of them during this exploration of the land of origin. After all, the god behind Candace definitely had his own interests to pursue. Before Xiao Lekun led the various territories into the Xiaoxing Plain, he made 3 rules with the lords. They must not interfere with the normal order of the Xiaoxing Plain. Otherwise, the Xiaoxing Plain, as a medium to low difficulty plain, would definitely not be able to withstand the attacks of so many territories. If they weren't careful, they would be unified. Although Xiao Lekun's Sea Cliff's secret realm wouldn't be unified and reshaped, it would definitely be affected. At least some relationships in the secular world would have to be reconstructed, and there would be a blank period for the plane's reconstruction, which would seriously affect the profits. The White Phoenix territory, which was already attacking the Xiaoxing Plain, was also restricted. Bai Xiaowen could only order Vladimir to maintain the balance between the Song dynasty and Mongolia and not take the initiative to attack. After half a year, Bai Xiaowen once again stepped on the land of the Xiaoxing Plain and saw Chenrong. Chenrong was already a high-level quasi-king level master, and he was only half a step away from the achievements of the previous generation's headmaster. Her bearing also seemed more graceful and noble. Wearing a crimson dress, she was like a proud phoenix. Bai Xiaowen brought news of the headmaster and first elder of the Shanqing school. Of course, he didn't reveal the specific information of the Sea Cliff secret realm. He only told Chenrong that the headmaster and first elder of the Shanqing school had joined a hidden sect and were unwilling to come back. Chenrong was surprised and happy to hear that his master and grandfather were safe and sound. However, in this surprise, there was inevitably a trace of resentment. After all, these 2 elders had abandoned Shanqing school. During the crisis of Shanqing school, if it weren't for the appearance of Bai Xiaowen, Dongting Blessed Land would have been occupied by the Black Sky cult. Have you settled the matters in your territory? Is the territory still in danger? Chenrong asked. It's been settled. Bai Xiaowen hesitated for a moment. Chenrong narrowed his slender eyes. You're leaving again? Bai Xiaowen nodded. I'm going on a long trip this time. Perhaps I won't be back for 6 or 7 years. Oh. Chenrong's reaction was very cold. What does it have to do with me? It's better if you don't come back. With her red dress fluttering, Chenrong turned around and left. Bai Xiaowen raised his arm, but he didn't say anything. Within the clouds, Xiao Lekun's figure appeared, accompanied by Xiafeng. Are you done here? Xiao Lekun asked. Bai Xiaowen nodded gently, then said, I still need to go to the Dark Era. Well, there's still a week's time. Settle it as soon as possible. Xiao Lekun said, as soon as the ticket transmission prompt appears, you must gather at the Blue Planet Evolutionary platform immediately. Don't delay. Understood. Bai Xiaowen went to the Dark Era plane again and returned on time 7 days later. The Blue Planet Evolutionary platform. The platform, which had always been deserted, was obviously filled with the aura of many powerhouses this time. The reason was simple. The ticket had to be on the evolutionary platform to be effective. Therefore, at this time, almost all the powerhouses in the Star Alliance who were qualified to participate in the Land of Origin had gathered here. Many people were like Xiafeng. They were usually elusive. This time, their appearance caused many low-level and mid-level evolvers to exclaim in surprise. They didn't know what major event had caused so many powerhouses to appear at the same time. Inside a box in the arena. Apart from Xiao Lakun, Xia Feng, and Bai Xiaowen, the queen bee was also present. Here's the prompt. Xia Feng suddenly put down his wine glass and said, "Okay, I've said what needs to be said. We'll meet again in the land of origin in 3 years." Xiao Lakun raised his wine glass. Xia Feng said to Bai Xiaowen, "Don't waste the 3 years in the spatial passage." Bai Xiaowen nodded. The spatial passage was lacking in psionic particles, so it wasn't suitable for cultivation and breakthroughs. This was especially true for high-level evolvers. Every time they broke through, they had to absorb a large amount of psionic particles from the outside world. It was impossible to rely on spirit crystals to replenish it. However, although they couldn't break through their realm, they could cultivate their skills and specialization through meditation battles. The 4 of them raised their glasses together. "See you again in the land of origin." Bai Xiaowen repeated the last half of Xiao Lakun's sentence. "Okay." Xia Feng nodded. "In the land of origin, we have a competitive relationship." The queen bee drank the wine in her glass and said with a smile, "However, if I have no hope of obtaining the treasure, I'll hope that one of you will obtain it." "That's right. It's better than letting outsiders benefit, especially our enemies," Bai Xiaowen agreed. Xiao Lakun smiled, took out the ticket, and placed his palm on the ticket. A beam of starlight flashed, and Xiao Lakun's figure disappeared. Xia Feng and the queen bee used their tickets one after another and entered the spatial passage. "All secrets will be revealed," Bai Xiaowen muttered to himself and gently covered the ticket with his palm. Beginning the teleportation. Destination, unknown. The teleportation will take 3 years and 2 months. Do you agree? Agree. A light flashed, and a sense of weightlessness came. When the light dissipated, Bai Xiaowen was already inside a spatial passage. Bai Xiaowen sat cross-legged on a silver throne. The throne moved forward slowly, gliding at a constant speed in the passage. In the spatial passage, there was no concept of speed. The so-called gliding forward was just a feeling of moving forward. Simply put, whether an evolver moved forward quickly, slowly, or even backward in the passage, it would not affect the final destination and the time spent on the journey. The moment the teleportation began, the destination and time spent were already determined. Bai Xiaowen closed his eyes. In the spatial passage for one person, it was the safest place. There was no need to pay attention to the outside world. Bai Xiaowen entered a state of meditation and began the cultivation of meditation battle. Meditation battle was a cultivation method to fight with an imaginary enemy and gain combat experience. Bai Xiaowen's meditation battle was somewhat different from ordinary people. He was multitasking. At the same time, he was imagining many versions of himself in his mind. Some were using martial arts, some were using sword arts, some were using fire spells, some were using thunder spells, and some were using other martial arts skills. He was having a chaotic battle in his mind. The efficiency of this meditation battle was more than 10 times higher than other people's. As the teleportation progressed, Bai Xiaowen's combat specialization and skill level also slowly improved. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.